So hey guys, welcome back to my channel. What if Naruto manipulated whole Konoha village and became immortal evil god? Movie 3. Naruto's mind was constantly on Sasori, but he couldn't leave the project unfinished. Orochimaru's main bases were in ruins and the Snake Sannin was fighting a desperate war of attrition. Sasori needed to die but Naruto won't leave Orochimaru alive. Best to take care of one problem before moving on to another. The real problem was that Naruto didn't know how to kill Sasori. There were rumors that the ninja wasn't quite human any longer. He also didn't know where to find the Suna puppeteer. It would not be an easy task all around. The Taro puppet and number 3 had personally examined most of Rice country and the number of remaining possibilities for Orochimaru's remaining bunkers was quite small. The man would not want to give up his base of operations without a fight and he was arrogant enough to believe that no one could defeat him on his home turf. It took only 3 more raids before the 2 ninja got an irate Orochimaru to attack them. 7 massive snakes popped out of nowhere. On top of the largest one Orochimaru and the guards stood and began lobbing devastating techniques down against Taro and number 3. "You will die this evening, you horrible thugs," Orochimaru screamed. "I don't know how or why you've survived as long as you have, but no one can escape me forever." The snapping mouths of the snakes were everywhere it seemed. Their bodies twisted and contracted over the whole field of battle. Minutes passed. The enemies hadn't been retaliating. Indeed, one enemy looked to be crushed inside of Manda's massive coils. The other shinobi was gone, crushed perhaps under a summon. It felt like a hollow victory to Orochimaru. These 2 had harassed and destroyed so much of his force and his infrastructure. To have a simple conclusion just felt wrong. Orochimaru turned to look as 3 of the massive summons simultaneously screamed out in terror and then were forced back to the summon realm. A second later, Manda himself squealed in pain and anger before he turned into a mere cloud of smoke. Orochimaru twisted and pivoted his body so he landed in a tree. Seiken landed badly and was hurt. "Show yourselves, you low-born beasts," the Snake Sannin bellowed. He was normally calm but nothing had ever destroyed his boss summon without Orochimaru having at least an inkling of what was happening. He gathered his breath in time to see the remaining summons banished back to their native realm. What kind of technique could be used remotely to banish summons? Orochimaru, master of 3000 jutsu, did not have the first clue. Indeed, the theory of summoning suggested that there were only 3 ways to banish a summon. For the summon itself to will it, for the summoner to will it, or for the summon to use up its gifted chakra through vigorous combat or monstrous wounds. Orochimaru hadn't sent them back. Manda certainly hadn't willed himself back. So there was something about the chakra or else the summoning theory wasn't quite right. Orochimaru watched as Seiken was attacked. The taller ninja didn't use any kind of chakra. Indeed, Orochimaru couldn't feel the ninja's presence or get an accurate gauge of how powerful he might be. One of the punches somehow drew blood. That was when Seiken began to scream. His skin seemed to balloon up and then melt off him. The heat necessary to accomplish this had instantly destroyed the ninja's capacity to scream. The ninja used poisoned blades or some other unusual technique. The Snake Sannin began to feel a bit nervous. He couldn't even detect where his opponents were. Nor did he know of any poison or other type of technique that had the same effects as what killed Seiken. "If it's to be to the death, let us fight like ninja." The whisper in Orochimaru's ear came before he could react. Acceptable. Then the Snake Sannin knew no more. A kunai severed the ninja's spinal column. 2 battered ninja just stood over the pair of rapidly cooling corpses. They said nothing and did nothing. For this raid, Naruto had gone back to old model puppets, one designed to look like Taro and another to resemble number 3. Orochimaru had fallen to a puppet and he hadn't even known it. Since neither puppet had a chakra network, Orochimaru couldn't sense them. They were made entirely from wood and the only chakra they had access to were tiny filaments, the chakra strings Naruto used to control them. It was hardly sporting but the Snake Sannin had worn the skin of other ninjas had killed in order to infiltrate and attack the hidden leaf. Taro and number 3 played by Orochimaru's rules, brutal and vicious, without mercy. Number 3 and the real Taro took almost 15 minutes to arrive on the scene. They left their hiding spot a few miles away only after Orochimaru was already dead. It wasn't terribly sporting, but they'd hung back in one of the safe areas they'd already investigated and cleared. Orochimaru couldn't get in a lucky killing blow if he wasn't fighting real ninja. Once he arrived, number 3 used one of his steam techniques to obliterate the Snake Sannin's body. Taro used fire to destroy the dead bodyguard. "It seems too easy," number 3 said. No. It was not easy to drive Orochimaru into a blind rage, nor to make him so overconfident, nor to develop the chakra poison we loaded into the puppets to dispel the summons. "We have been planning this since that unfortunate day when we discovered what happened to number 2. Is it time to move on?" Taro nodded. "The old business is concluded. We may now proceed to new business." "It's going to be harder, isn't it?" Taro looked at the ashes from Orochimaru's body. "Any technique I could imagine is likely something that Sasori could reproduce. When we attack him, we have one chance. If we launch the attack and fail, but escape, we shall have to shelve every attack he witnessed from us and design counters to them. I believe Sasori to be a learning enemy unlike the Snake Sannin who thought too highly of his own skills. He was world-renowned for his chakra sensing capabilities, number 3 said, with a smile. As I told you before, number 3, any advantage can eventually be turned against you. I hope never to be as arrogant as our fallen opponents. Should I ever succumb, feel free to slap me around. That got number 3 laughing. At the mental image and supreme difficulty of knocking around one of Naruto's true capacity. Should we tell anyone what we've done? Number 3 asked. It wasn't every day a pair of basically unranked and village-less ninja killed a famous S-ranked ninja. Perhaps. I think we should, number 3 pushed. If we do, we'll attribute it to Taro just in time for the Taro personality to meet a fitting public end. Neither of us can continue to grow if we have half the elemental nations monitoring us. It's bad enough that Sasori got interested, but we will end that as soon as we can. Taro made the hand signs for an earth-style technique. All the ash in front of Naruto was sucked down into the earth, a dozen meters down. Orochimaru's head would have brought in truly staggering sums, but Naruto didn't want any part of Orochimaru's body hanging around. Ninja bodies were dangerous things. Who knew what a skilled medic nin could do with a bit of Orochimaru's brain or blood? Naruto didn't want to find out. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto sat in his bunker in T Country and pored over thousands of records. He had files on every civilian who had ever entered a grass country village. Most were merchants of some sort. Naruto was looking for something vital. This knowledge was precious. Indeed, the cost for all of this wealth of information, for this wealth of potential covers for espionage missions or infiltration assignments, had been the famed grass cutter sword that Naruto had ripped from Orochimaru when they'd fought in Konoha. The Grass Jounin Council had offered Ryo, gemstones, jutsu scrolls, but the only remotely interesting thing they possessed were moldy old documents on civilians. Naruto took the only copies of them, thousands and thousands of records and photographs. For what Naruto envisioned, this information, detailed and imperfect and true, was worth more than gold. He needed new identities. The ones Head set up for his puppets operated by Kage Bunshin throughout the elemental countries were thin cover. Any of them coming under scrutiny wouldn't pass muster. But these files, Naruto could fine-tune his many identities. He could give the manager of that tea drying warehouse a detailed background, imperfect and messy, and guaranteed to be above reproach. Why bother? It was a lot of time and effort to spend. He needed spies. Lots more spies. If he was going to find Akasuna no Sasori, he needed an army of spies. Sasori had sought Naruto out, had found number 2. Now Naruto needed to return the favor. Sasori spies were excellent and deeply placed throughout the elemental nations. Head tracked down Naruto and, then later number 2 without difficulty. Matching that level of accomplishment would likely take some time. So more spies. Puppet spies in every walk of life. Whores, vagrants, business owners, ramen shop attendants. Full identities, bits scraped from this file, other nuggets gleaned from a different file. He definitely needed a strong presence in Suna, Sasori's home territory. It was also the home of the one-tailed Jinchuriki. Yes, Naruto realized. That was the way. These Akatsuki, according to Kabuto, were tracking the tailed beasts. Naruto could set up his spies close to their usual locations. The two tails stayed 40 kilometers outside of Hidden Cloud in a special military base. Naruto could set up a puppet as a military contractor, someone who dug ditches or cooked food or something. Things that ninja wouldn't do themselves. The others. Naruto began sketching out what he knew of the other beasts. It wasn't much, as Kabuto had known little when had been captured. Naruto worked long into the night sketching out plans. He finally had an inkling of how to trace back Sasori. Head put out a general spy network, but Head spent the greatest amount of his time tracking the tailed beasts. Sasori wouldn't be able to stay away from one or more of them forever. Perhaps Jiraiya would know more about the tailed beasts. Interesting. Naruto yawned, stretched, and went to see the man named as his godfather. XXXXXXXXXX. Number 3 and the Taro puppet had been on the road, non-stop, for the last 6 days. At present, they were cutting through rice country on their way to a base in lightning country. Naruto had to use Taro's abilities to set up his new spy ring. Sasori, a true spy master, was able to mask his movements at will. It would take a large spy network and a lot of luck to discover the location of the insane puppeteer. Number 3 went along to relieve his anger at Sasori and his boredom. More than a few bandits met their end in the last week. He liked being outside far more than sitting inside. He wondered, from time to time, if he had done the right thing staying with his sensei. He continued to learn and improve, of course, but Naruto wasn't much of a people person. He was brilliant, however, and had helped refine number 3 into a deadly ninja. He didn't know a lot of jutsu, no, he knew how to construct jutsu from scratch, a self-taught skill that was worth its weight in gold. For now, number 3 resolved to stay. He was still learning, still improving. If that ever changed then he would need to find a new sensei or go out totally on his own. Number 3 was inside his head more than a ninja should be. He almost didn't stop when he felt Taro grab at his arm. "Pay attention," Taro whispered. Number 3 blinked a few times and then saw he was about to step in something unusual. There was something wet and dark on the path a few steps ahead. It didn't really look like dirt or grass. It looked most like tar. How could he have missed that? Stupid. A trap. Taro nodded. A type I've never seen before. Number 3 stepped backward while the Taro puppet didn't move at all. Both ninja were attempting to get a fix on the person Wad laid the trap. It looked something like a small version of one of Jiraiya's earth techniques, the underworld swamp. Even safe inside a bunker, Naruto didn't want to find out what kind of damage this little trap would inflict. "Fuckers are smarter than it'd have thought," a rough voice boomed from off to the left of the path. Naruto, using Taro's chakra network, tried to find the source of the voice but couldn't. This was a high-level ninja, then, someone who could hide his presence from another skilled ninja. "Don't be so crass, kiss him. Let's get this done," another voice said, this one a bit bored. Number 3 looked up and around in surprise. He recognized the name Kisum. This wasn't going to be good. He remembered what it was like being near to Orochimaru and then to Sasori. Kisum, according to the bingo book, was just as fearsome an enemy, a master swordsman who wasn't afraid of ninjutsu. The man Wad killed a daimyo and 100 or more of that man's samurai guardians. A pair of ninja dressed in black robes with red clouds stepped from behind a thatch of trees and brush. Naruto was very concerned now. They'd been close, but they'd masked their chakras somehow. It was a technique that Naruto had not come across before. Taro took up the conversation. Number 3 and he had almost walked into a trap. They needed to regain an advantage, if possible. "Akatsuki again," Taro said in a bored voice. "An Uchiha, likely, and then a ninja from Water Country. You honor me with your presence." Taro gave a mocking bow. Naruto knew it was almost always better to fight an angry enemy. "Sasori didn't tell us you had a personality, little ninja." "Good to know. Useful for a tombstone," the blue-skinned ninja said. The Uchiha Itachi, if Jiraiya's explanations were accurate, looked annoyed, but didn't comment on his partner's words. "Uzumaki Naruto, you will come with us. You have something that we require." Taro and Number 3 both laughed at that. It seemed that even the great Sasori hadn't sussed out that Taro was a puppet, or, if he hadn't shared it with his Akatsuki colleagues. Number 3 was still nervous, but Taro was the most powerful ninja human or puppet Number 3 had ever heard of. He tried not to show his nerves. "I see nothing at all amusing," Itachi said. "Come with me now, Naruto, or perhaps I will allow my partner to practice some of his depravities upon you." "None of that sick shit, Itachi. I just said that I didn't think the kid needed his legs, not with what we need from him." Taro smiled broadly. "Stupid ninjas always have to talk, always have to threaten and chatter and waste time. Good for me, not so good for them." The only thing staying his hand was Itachi. Naruto, back at the home base, wasn't sure what to do with the ex-Konoha ninja. The Uchiha wasn't quite the monster popular lore made him out to be, not with a signed order absolving him of the blame for the Uchiha massacre. All this time jabbering had given Naruto more than ample time to prepare the flowing red death. Naruto had never tested it against S-ranked opponents, but it would be an interesting opening gesture. He was trying to choreograph what might come next if he needed more than the opening dance. "Uchiha, I will have to politely decline your offer. I rather prize my body and have no interest in whatever you want with my tenant." Kisum looked pleased and lifted his sword into a position to use it. "I was hoping you'd say that, little ninja." "I am sorry, Itachi. Say goodbye to your partner." A millisecond later a dozen red puppets sprung up from rocks inscribed with special seals. Kisum, to his credit, managed to evade 3 of his attackers in that instant. But 9 of them struck home. Kisum's shredded body landed on the ground a moment after the red-tinted puppets vanished into thin air. The puppets hadn't left Itachi untouched either, but their purpose hadn't been to kill him. No, they'd cut his Achilles tendons, the tendons in his wrists, and stabbed Itachi's Sharingan eyes. The last known Uchiha was alive, but would be unable to ever take up ninja duties again. He wouldn't be able to run or make hand signs. And his special eye techniques were gone. "Come, Itachi. I have much to ask you about. Number 3, please collect the sword and the head. Burn the rest of that traitor's body." "Right away," Number 3 said, more than a bit numb. He didn't know what had happened, other than a blur of red. It had moved faster than Number 3 could even see. He immediately rethought his sensei. If a person his same age could do this, then Number 3 should be able to do something unstoppable, too. He needed to work harder. "I don't need to suggest that you never mention what you saw today, Number 3. That technique is one of my most lethal and it will continue to be effective so long as it's secret. This is only the second time I've ever used it in combat. Its success relies upon its remaining a secret." Number 3 just nodded. "One of my most lethal." Naruto was keeping secrets, it seemed. It was good that number 3 hadn't parted ways yet. If you have a storage scroll, would you mind sealing away the head and sword? It may be some time before we need them. Right, number 3 said. Pharaoh lifted a stoic and silent Itachi from the ground. I think our good friend Itachi will have much of interest to tell us, especially regarding Sasori. The three continued through Rice Country. Itachi didn't speak for a week and only then after Naruto personally broke him of his silence. Number 3 didn't envy the Uchiha that day. Naruto was brutal in extracting information. The information, while interesting, just reinforced how cagey Sasori really was. No one, least of all Itachi, knew where Sasori spent his time when he wasn't on a mission. Naruto would need to find his prey the old-fashioned way through perseverance and dumb luck. The shadow clone, hinged to look like a nondescript personage, walked slowly and deliberately up a narrow dirt path into the mountains outside Hidden Cloud. There was a base there, most likely abandoned, that the Akatsuki had used in ages past. The shadow clone had been created for one purpose. To deliver a warning and a promise. The clone carried 2 bags. One held the pieces of a famed ninja sword. The other, the head of a notorious murderer. The day Naruto had sent his clone to make a statement. A fuck you unmistakable to anyone who witnessed the gruesome scene Naruto had concocted. The hardest part had been getting this location. Then breaking Samahita into pieces, liquid nitrogen and a sledgehammer had just been enough. This final act was nothing in comparison. In less than an hour, Naruto's clone had pounded the 3 largest chunks of Samahita into the stone near to the safe house. It formed a little niche, one just large enough to house the head of its former master. It was a macabre shrine. By the time some Akatsuki stumbled upon it, the blue skin would be gone, rotted or eaten. But the pieces of Samahita were unmistakable. They would know that Uzumaki Naruto had declared war on them and on anyone they sent after him. The message was specifically for Sasori, a calling out. It was almost samurai-like in its brazen stupidity. But it seemed like the right first step. The Naruto clone stepped back and looked at the scene. It was correct. He dispersed himself and hoped the real Naruto would be pleased. It didn't make up for the death of number 2, but it was a step in the right direction. XXXXXXXXXX. A blinded Uchiha Itachi heard stone moving against stone. It was his tormentor, the 9-tailed Jinchuriki, returning for some more brutalization. He hadn't fully bought into the scheme engineered by his sensei, Uchiha Madara, to capture all 9 of the Bijuu, but he wished he could have killed this bastard of a ninja. Itachi felt revulsion about the other Uchiha had killed, but he possessed no small amount of pride in his own accomplishments. He was a powerful ninja, a traitor to the clan, but for a good purpose, the greatest genius they'd ever produce. To be so thoroughly unprepared, to think that a mere boy could do nothing against one such as he, foolish. Pride goeth before a fall, the third Hokage had once said about the Uchiha. So true. He and Kisame had laid an ambush, so they'd never expected one in return. Itachi didn't even have his Sharingan active. He had no idea what those red blurs were even now. The Jinchuriki certainly wasn't telling. Still angry, Itachi. Naruto's calm voice mocked even now. Itachi said nothing. Fine, if it will help you to answer my questions, I will tell you that I expected no easy victory against you too, if my initial attack failed. All swordsmen need a moment or 3 to get momentum. All ninjutsu users need time to make their hand seals. My chosen arts are both faster and slower than yours. I defeated you with seals of my own design, seals it took me 22 seconds to prepare. Had you attacked immediately, you would have maintained surprise, you would have had the advantage. Your need to ask me to surrender was pointless and it cost you your eyes. Yes, Itachi now realized all that. There are ninjas stronger than you, Jinchuriki. Of that, I have no doubt. I am personally preparing to kill Akasuna no Sasori. I expect him to be the greatest challenge I've faced. Itachi frowned. Hess nothing compared to. Here the Uchiha managed to stop himself. This bastard was fishing for information Itachi almost volunteered. Compared to whom, Itachi-kun? I will say nothing further. You will. I have no doubt about it. But now, I need to prepare your body. I think it's highly unlikely you'll ever escape from here, but if you do you could have a medic nin attempt to repair the destroyed tendons in your arms and ankles. The seals I am going to inscribe on your body will ensure my safety from you. Itachi struggled. He resisted. In his weakened form, it was useless. Half an hour later he could feel his chakra feeding the seals, rather than remaining available for use in ninjutsu. Insidious, Jinchuriki. I can feel your seals robbing me of my chakra. A prison for your body that you will never be free of. Then you have no leverage to get me to speak, Itachi calmly reasoned. If you can't tempt me with my freedom, then you have nothing. Your seals prove I will never be free. You no longer have a functional body, that is true. And I will never release you. But a prideful creature like yourself would betray everyone and everything in order to remain alive. You will talk, Itachi, or you will not receive food. I shall return in 3 or 4 days to see if you have changed your mind. I think the hunger will bend your opinion my way. Even after feeling torture at Naruto's hand, Itachi was still surprised by how ruthless this boy really was. He would have to think on this threat and assess whether the Jinchuriki really meant it. If it were a bluff, then Itachi would want to kill himself for falling for it. If it were true, if Naruto could actually let another person starve to death, that was something different. Yes, this required thought. Stone groaned against stone. Naruto was gone again. Itachi was left with only his thoughts. XXXXXXXXXX. 3 days later, Itachi knew that the Jinchurika's threat was real. His life had been saved, unlike Kisam's, in order to extract information. If he refused to provide it, Naruto would kill him. A simple fact. As the stone stopped moving against stone, Itachi made his decision. He would answer the ninja's questions. He had broken and slipped during torture and gave what little he knew of Sasori's movements and hiding spots, but Itachi expected this calmer Jinchuriki would be even more uncaring. Neglect, fashioned correctly, could be more devastating than physical torture. From your body posture it seems you've steeled yourself to collaboration with your captor. I think it the better choice. Ask you questions, Jinchuriki. I will. Let me be clear, Itachi, about the seals on your body. They do steal nearly every drop of available chakra, but it is for a purpose. Your body is covered in special exploding seals, more than 500 of them continually fed off your power. If I ever prove you've lied to me, I will show you how well they work. Do we have an understanding? I have no choice. You do. Speak truth or die. Again, do you understand? Yes. That is fine. My first question. The records I stole from Konoha ordering the Uchiha massacre differ from what happened according to the popular accounts. Tell me the true story. Uchiha Madara had made plans decades ago. Madara? That name sounds familiar. He was a contemporary of the first and second Hokages. Another one of the immortality-seeking ninja, huh? Why do the powerful ones go that way? He founded the Akatsuki, even if he hides in the shadows. He personally recruited our putative leader, Pain. Naruto sighed. So, compare this Madara to Sasori or Orochimaru. Itachi had never seen Madara fight, but he had heard stories. Madara beat Pain. Pain could beat Sasori and Orochimaru at the same time. Continue with the story about the massacre. Naruto stayed long into the night. Sasori was picked over again. Everything Itachi had seen Sasori do or hints as to how he thought. Then this was repeated for Pain, Madara, and everyone else Itachi knew in the Akatsuki. Especially troubling were the powers Itachi knew Madara possessed. If Sasori wasn't enough, now there was Madara and Pain, too. Deidara used explosives. Konan could manipulate paper, even turning herself into paper. Zetsu made Naruto's skin crawl, a cannibal and a spy almost without restriction, the previous S-rank ninja that Grass Country had tossed out for being too powerful. It was the freak show made powerful. Then Pain and his Rinnegan eyes. That would need studying. Naruto brought Itachi food and watched a former ninja eat with difficulty. He took the tray of food away when he left. Naruto came to one painful conclusion. If he tried to go up against Sasori now, Naruto would likely die. The unwise sending of Kisam's head to a former Akatsuki safe house would have these ninja on edge. He had tipped his hat without revealing the full strength he wielded and they would be prepared. Stupid. Stupid. Pride comes before the fall. Naruto couldn't keep from bragging, couldn't help but return Sasori's gruesome calling card. Now it would just prepare ninjas who were stronger and better trained. It was time to take the heat off. It was time to retire for a while. It was time to finally begin preparing. The seals and puppet techniques and poisons Naruto had amassed wouldn't do much against someone like Madara. He had to invent specific Madara killers and pain killers. It would take years. XXXXXXXXXXX. Jiraiya tumbled out of a storage scroll and blinked a few times before he realized he was outside. It had been a long time, months, since he had been captured by that grass ninja. He got to his feet as gracefully as he could and looked around. What's the deal? The ninja, that damned grass ninja Wad stopped wearing his forehead protector, stepped forward, smiling. The deal is simple. I have decided to test you to see if you're worth the bother of continuing to feed you, oh awesome toad sage. What? Jiraiya felt like he'd been asleep for a week now. This crazy talk. A duel to the death. The grass ninja's voice sounded mocking and cruelly playful. It's your funeral. Orochimaru said something similar before I killed him. Taro leapt forward and began to rain down blow after blow. The assertion that Orochimaru was finally dead threw Jiraiya completely off his game, leaving aside the fact that he had been imprisoned for months and hadn't trained in that time. He reacted slowly and felt like he was being battered around by a bevy of women at the hot springs after Jiraiya had been caught peeping. He pushed himself away from that insane grass ninja and began forming hand seals. Jiraiya needed to collect himself. Toad summoning technique. In seconds he was atop Gamma Bunta and the boss Toad was complaining about being summoned. Bunta, stop. That little squirt down there claims he killed Orochimaru. I have no reason to doubt him. Bullshit, the massive toad shouted. That snake Manda would have been pissing it about so loudly I would have heard of it. He takes some small pride in how evil his summoner is. I will inquire when this pest is gone. The eels are friends to both the toads and the snakes. Jiraiya just grunted and cut his summon off. Give me some oil, Bunta. The primitive flamethrower came into being and the ground 30 meters in front of the boss toad were scorched. Such a powerful weapon was hard to aim and retarget, so it wasn't too surprising Taro evaded the attack. If you're done gossiping, Jiraiya, I came to fight you, not an ancient creature who has much more sense than you do, Taro said. Then he jumped forward and jabbed a long thin knife into the summon. The boss toad shrieked and dispersed into a huge cloud of smoke. Jiraiya fell and landed awkwardly, but he was still fully mobile. How did you do that? Jiraiya asked. There are more things than are dreamt of in your philosophy, old man. This is not a lesson, it's a duel. Show me what you can do. Prove to me I was right to spare your life. Fear coursed through Jiraiya's body. You might have kidnapped me, but there is no way you could kill me. Taro leapt forward and landed 2 swift kicks to Jiraiya's backside. The grass ninja moved faster than Jiraiya could clearly see. It was worrying. Jiraiya took a few seconds to make his decision. He hadn't perfected the Sage Mode technique yet, so he had to get this out of it to jutsu spar. The embarrassing kicks to Jiraiya's ass told the old ninja that his young opponent could have already killed him had he been serious. He was still playing for some reason. To get this on a better footing, Jiraiya needed an awesome technique. Or a pair of them. One hand slammed to the earth as he shouted out, "Swamp of the underworld." The massive earth technique began to suck everything under. In his other hand, before he managed to stand up, he fashioned a Rasengan. The little grass ninja would be getting the full treatment. Jiraiya jumped from where he was to a tree on the edge of his chakra-created swamp. He clung to the trunk with one foot and a hand. He finally located Taro and jumped from spot to spot on his swamp. He had studied the technique for years and knew how to survive momentary brushes with it. The grass ninja hadn't seen it before and was trying to pull himself out of it. Serves the cocky bastard right. Taro pulled himself out of the muck at about the same moment Jiraiya arrived with the Rasengan in hand. A thrust and a dodge. Again and again, Taro wasn't where Jiraiya thought he'd be. How could he move like that? For a big tall guy, he moved like the wind. It was almost like he didn't have a proper spine. What a monster of an opponent. Perhaps, in a moment of seriousness, this asshole from grass really had killed Orochimaru. Hold still, damn it. I don't think so, Taro said, dodging again. You want to put that ball of chakra through my body. Jiraiya growled and lunged again. Nothing but air. How is this a duel if you won't attack? I am letting the grey old man wear himself out before I bother. I figure you've got another 5 or 10 minutes of stamina left, then we'll see. Shit. Jiraiya hadn't been thinking about that. Taro then pulled out a kunai and began attacking for real. Jiraiya would try to land the Rasengan and would miss. Taro would pull away at the last second and managed to draw a faint line of blood from Jiraiya's armor shoulder. Jiraiya almost dispelled the Rasengan and attempted a Rasen Shuriken, one of the unfinished techniques of his most promising student, one likely not to work completely as intended. Instead, he launched himself for another attack. He hand thrust forward to catch nothing. Instead, Jiraiya began to howl in pain. Taro's kunai was now embedded in the older ninja's pelvis with a crushing amount of force. They'd heard that an old pervert like you used your brain too little and your groin too much. I see I failed to end your career as a peeping Tom, but perhaps y'all think better of it next time. I am going to crush you, you little fuck, Jiraiya gasped, in more pain than had ever been in. Not even a beatdown from Tsunade left him this angry, enraged, and impotent. There was something very odd, very dangerous about this grass ninja. If Jiraiya didn't figure out his weaknesses soon, the Toad Sage would be dead. Perhaps Taijutsu was his strong suit. Did Jiraiya need to find an elemental weakness? The Toad Sage had, through many years of pain and training, become proficient in the main 5 elements. Would this younger ninja be invulnerable to all of them? Jiraiya smelled salt water nearby. He decided to try a combination water and lightning attack to stun the grass ninja. Electric lashing missed. When he exhaled, a salty pressurized mist shot at Taro, crackling with electrical energy. It wasn't a wide area attack like the swamp, but it was effective. Jiraiya had learned it off an asshole ninja from Hidden Cloud what attacked him years ago. Jiraiya remembered the technique and buried that asshole in an unmarked grave. The surprise attack hit the grass ninja in the shoulder. Blood and bone and flesh dissolved instantly. The ninja's left arm became useless. But it didn't stun him. The young ninja resisted the crackling electricity. It should be enough to stop a heart for a few moments. Instead of anger, Jiraiya earned laughter from his target. Finally something new, old man. A good attack. I'm more of a hand-to-hand combat specialist, but I know a few interesting techniques. Let's see how you feel about this one in return. Taro knelt and slammed his good right hand and his mostly useless left one on the ground. Exploding mountain perfusion. In all directions, save for a small ring of safety for Taro, jagged pillars erupted from the ground in all directions. More than one slammed in Jiraiya. Taro smiled, lifted his hand off the ground, and the pillars fell away. It was a terribly draining technique. It became a slugfest again. Neither ninja had enough chakra to continue throwing out high-level techniques like that. But Jiraiya's attack had succeeded in making Taro slower and less lethal. A one-armed ninja was disadvantaged against a ninja who was tired but had both arms. Jiraiya realized he was winning because Taro was losing blood faster than Jiraiya was. Jiraiya landed a good punch into the grass ninja's good shoulder, and that sent the man down. Jiraiya slammed his hands onto the ground again. Swamp of the underworld. This time Taro did not evade the attack. He seemed almost out of it, unable to respond. The devastating earth technique took hold of Taro and drug him deep underground. Jiraiya released the technique then, leaving his opponent and one-time captor dead under meters and meters of earth and stone. Jiraiya collapsed on the ground. Why had that crazy ninja held back for so long? Had played with Jiraiya for most of the battle and only gotten serious in the last few minutes. That bastard could have crushed Jiraiya, and it was only 2 lucky blows that saved Jiraiya from death. He tried to calm himself and slow his breathing. He was terribly out of shape right now. Damn. So close to death. Sarutobi-sensei should thump him a good one for doing so poorly. That grass ninja was bad news. Jiraiya got to his feet and began walking. The pain from his hip reminded him he had a kunai lodged in the bone. He knew some medic techniques, but he wasn't sure whether it was better to leave the kunai in or to take it out and try to staunch the blood flow. Damn. He didn't even have enough chakra left to summon a medium-sized toad. He took a step and then almost screamed. He lowered himself to the ground. Head recover for a bit, summon a toad. Head find a road. The road would lead him to a village. Then he could get directions back to Fire Country. He needed to inform the Hokage of these happenings. He also needed to summon Gamabunta in a day or 3 to see if Orochimaru was truly dead. He was hurt terribly, but he would survive. He would heal and get strong again. He won't let something like this happen again. Not ever. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto was sad to say goodbye to his Taro identity. Head created and even lived inside many of the 15 different versions of the Taro puppet head created over the years. The last one, created specifically to battle Jiraiya, used real blood and bone and tissue that a few bandits had unwillingly donated to the cause. Working with dead bodies that way made Naruto feel sick even weeks after the fact. He would not be attempting such a thing again, not if he could avoid it. He finished eating breakfast in his small hovel in Earth Country. He was going to spend a few weeks personally establishing his new identity before he turned it over to a shadow clone. Number 3 was walking up the path from his cottage a kilometer away. He had insisted on joining Naruto in his training exercise. Even if it lasts years. Naruto had asked. Even so. Number 3 walked to the door which Naruto then opened. Morning, Naruto's student said. Ready to plant some trees? Yes. Let's get going. Have you given some thought to a disguise? At least a name? I can't, for safety's sake, continue to call you Number 3. I gave my true name up when I left grass with you, sensei. I am now Number 3, in my mind and my heart. But for the purpose of a disguise, I would be called Yamayaki. It means burning the hills. Isn't it a touch dramatic? No, I think it's just right. Naruto, with gray hair and a good deal of a tanning solution making him dark brown, just nodded. If Number 3 wished such an obvious name, they could make it work. Many people from the larger villages renamed themselves if they were fleeing the law. Earth Country's farming population was filled with people who were fleeing dark pasts elsewhere. That's why it was a perfect place to hide for a period of time. In a few weeks, they'd carve out a new underground bunker to use as a training facility. Then they could resume training. To kill Sasori. To deal with Pain and Madara. To realize Naruto's dream of being the strongest ninja ever even without a whole body. As Naruto and his students settled into work, Naruto wondered if that was an adequate goal any longer. Strength and revenge was a young man's work. Eventually he'd need a new goal. Assuming he survived Sasori, Pain, and Madara. The big assumption. The half-dead Jiraiya arrived in Konoha 3 days after his duel with Taro. His toad carriers were most displeased that the toad sage had refused medical attention in any one of the small villages they'd passed by. Paranoia could be a bad thing. It had almost killed Jiraiya. The lead toad carrying his summoner took the old ninja directly to the hospital, even though Jiraiya insisted on seeing the Hokage. The Anbu obviously informed the Hokage about Jiraiya's unusual reappearance, wounded and raving, and carried in by a bunch of massive toads. As the Hokage walked into the hospital, he heard a recapitulation of the raving. Apparently Jiraiya had killed a man who had killed Orochimaru. And had been the dead man's captive. And the grass ninja was one scary motherfucker. The comments about a grass ninja caught Sarutobi's interest. Naruto had assumed an identity there as Taro. Sarutobi arrived at the top floor, in the secure wing. Jiraiya had a lot of enemies, many of them husbands or former husbands of women Jiraiya had entertained, and Sarutobi didn't want his spymaster killed while asleep in a drug-induced stupor. The Hokage watched a medic nin repairing Jiraiya's injuries. He overheard that it would take some time for the ninja's bones to heal, but they had begun knitting together muscle and flesh already. The Hokage walked into the room. Jiraiya, even under the haze of pain medications, tried to talk. "Stop, my student. I heard bits and pieces of your ravings. I will try to see what makes sense. You claim Orochimaru is dead." The toads confirmed it. Manda is despondent. Jiraiya sounded smarter when he was on morphine, it seemed even if he was slurring his words. The Hokage was quiet for a long while. "I suppose you shouted this to everyone you met?" "Pretty much." The Hokage frowned. What good was a spymaster if he couldn't keep a secret? Orochimaru's unexpected death opened up some complications, some positive, some less so. The biggest problem was that Orochimaru had attacked Hidden Leaf, failed, and then been killed by someone other than a Hidden Leaf ninja. It made the village look weak and foolish if the story got out. Which Jiraiya had apparently done. Who claims to have killed him? Bastard grass ninja who kidnapped me. Sarutobi's eyes went wide. This could very well be Naruto, the same boy who likely destroyed the grocer wad contributed to the loss of his leg. The Hokage nodded at the medical attendants and they quickly left the room. Jiraiya was stable enough for confidential talk. His name? Teiko Tato? Taro of the river. Jiraiya nodded a bit. That's it. You say you killed this man, the one who claimed to have killed Orochimaru. Fucker broke my pelvis. He was going for my cannon and the gunner's mates with a bloody kunai. The Hokage rolled his eyes. Such lines were amusing in a filthy novel, but not in a serious conversation. Are you sure Hess dead? Really dead? I am going to need a highly accurate description of the battle, Jiraiya. Why? I believe it is possible that this Taro killed Orochimaru. I do not believe, however, that you killed him. I fucking did, the Toad Sannin shouted. Apparently morphine made him more profane than usual. Did he bleed? Did you see him bleed? I blasted his shoulder good. Lots of blood. Added Sarutobi stumped. Puppets, as he assumed Naruto to be using, didn't bleed. Let me tell you a story, my student. Listen carefully, then we will compare notes. When Orochimaru sequestered me during the battle a few months back, I began losing badly. Then I vanished. I still don't know how. When I was conscious again, I was sitting inside the Hokage monument talking to this Taro of the river. He had some harsh words for me but he also called me old man. Only one other person has dared call me that Naruto. I believe this Taro is Naruto's alter ego or is perhaps a puppet of Naruto's design. No, Jiraiya said. Not my godson. The bastard's first questions were about Naruto. I don't understand. Sleep, Jiraiya. We will speak again later. I have much to consider about your story. I also need to see if I can tamp down the rumors you've started. Good luck with that. I know. XXXXXXXXXX. The farmer with a cart hooked up to a stubborn mule walked slowly through Earth Country on his way to River Country. He was nearly at the Earth Grass border. Had already sent his colleague, Burning the Hills, ahead to find a couple of likely places to get situated. Of all the places Naruto had ever lived, he liked River Country the best. Given the chance, he opted to return there over spending time in the resorts of Fire Country or the beauty of Tea Country or any other place had known. There was just something liberating about the place. Naruto had left a fully articulated puppet in his stead back at the farm. There were a team of shadow clones to run that puppet and enough to spare in case urgent information was discovered. One could just pop and Naruto would have the information immediately. The last 6 months had woken Naruto to the fact that he needed to delegate. He tried to keep direct control over as many puppets as possible. He tried to do it all but it wasn't working. Now had arrived at using shadow clones to monitor his spying puppets. He had infiltrators, with deep backgrounds, in 8 villages in Lightning Country. He placed several in Wind Country, including one right in Hidden Sand. He was gathering information on the other Jinchuriki. Not every country was as cavalier with their secret weapons as Hidden Leaf, Cloud, and Sand. Some ninjas actually knew how to practice secrecy and deception. Naruto walked to the side of his mule, but suddenly tugged on its halter to stop. There were some odd chakra flowing around in the woods to the south. A ninja battle. Naruto was perfectly capable of holding his own in any battle hell, against even a Sannin he could paralyze a person and take over their body as an unwilling puppet. It wasn't quite mind control, there were some ninja who could do that, but it would be very devastating for a bunch of bandits or low-level ninja to suddenly have to fight against their own. He led the mule and his cart off the road to a shady area. He tied the mule to a tree and went to investigate. The lone ninja, masked, battled against 3 others. It appeared that another 3 were already dead or immobilized. Naruto stood close to a tree and masked his chakra as best he could. That skill was his greatest breakthrough in the last 6 months, had made progress on other fronts, but had done the most with chakra masking. The masked ninja was skilled. He used two short swords to block and attack his three enemies. He was graceful dodging a ninjutsu attack, some sort of water bullet. He hacked and slashed and made it look graceful. One of the three fell to a slash across his throat. The two remaining attackers intensified. They saw the writing on the wall. If they were to die, they would take their killer with them. Naruto saw the masked ninja turn his attention to the better of the two remaining ninja. That left an opening for the other ninja to pounce. When the long sword arced, Naruto decided to toss his hat into the ring just a bit. He attached a chakra string to the ninja's hand and tugged a bit, just a bit, for the lethal blow to bounce off the masked ninja's armor. It got the masked man's attention and his would-be killer wound up with a gaping throat wound. The one-on-one battle took a few minutes. The last remaining unmasked ninja was quite skilled with a blade. He also used lightning affinity chakra to punch up his attacks. But the masked ninja was winning, slowly but surely. It was an impressive battle to watch. When the masked ninja delivered a killing blow, he said, "I'm sorry. You were very skilled." He actually sounded apologetic. For a ninja, it was nothing strange to admire your opponent's strengths. But Naruto concentrated on that voice. It was familiar. Had heard it for years from one of his students, number 1. It was good to know he was still alive. Naruto watched number 1 immediately transition from battle to clean up. He sliced off one of his opponent's heads. Naruto decided to see how his old student was doing without compromising his current identity. "Hey, what are you doing there?" Naruto used the Earth Country accent had developed over the last 6 months. At that, number 1 looked up, startled. His hand was ready to throw a kunai before he recognized that a mere civilian, a dirty farmer, was talking to him. "Do not concern yourself. This man is a criminal from Waterfall Country. I am a bounty hunter of sorts. You have to hack their heads off. I must prove these criminals are dead, Master Farmer. Now, if y'all let me get back to my work." Yeah. Gruesome work. Bah. Give me a patch of daikon any day." Naruto walked back to his mule and continued on his way. Number 1 was still alive and practicing his desired trade. Naruto had done a small, nameless service for his former student in saving him from a savage sword blow. It felt nice. Pearl's number 3 would be glad to know that number 1 was faring so well. The hunter nin life was a tough one. But his students seemed to thrive. 6-on-1 and winning. Very nice work, even if Naruto couldn't say much for the boy's common sense. A ninja typically didn't plan to have these kinds of confrontations. But number 1 was always more about trapping and jinjutsu. If a trap failed, then he just might wind up with a whole lot of angry ninja on his hands. XXXXXXXXXXX. 30 months pass. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto walked up to a civilian house, knocked on the yelled, and received a shouted admittance. He walked inside, just to be attacked by a soggy toy thrown at his head. Number 3's son was less than a year old, and he liked to stick everything he touched in his mouth, but he was also highly accurate in hitting whatever he wanted. Naruto had been pelted by toys, soft foods, soggy bits of clothing, you name it. He found he liked being, as number 3 jokingly put it, Uncle Naruto to the little sprog. The kid had the better features of number 3, cheeks and eyes, and his civilian wife, hair and ears. The little boy was doted upon and loved, and it just made Naruto happy to see it, normalcy. The day was the 27th birthday of his covering identity here in River Country, so, of course, number 4 insisted on holding a party. A big party. Naruto's exploits in the last few years training and testing techniques against masses of bandits and missing nin had netted them some fair amount of ryo, which they had used to purchase all this land. Number 3 enjoyed playing the role of a wealthy minor daimyo, holding court over the farmers and merchants whose interests fell within his land. Naruto was here, of course, as the elder of 2 brothers. The wealthier and more desirable one. He was being put, as number 3 said, onto the meat market for perusal. In reality, gossip parties like this one for seeing and being seen were excellent occasions to gather rumors and unconfirmed intelligence. They were also fairly useful for disseminating information, too. Naruto had just returned from 2 months in Wave County spent in one of his bunkers. It was hard, nay, impossible to design techniques to fight against people one had only ever heard described. He had books filled with ideas, some of which actually worked. But very little of it felt natural. 3 years spent planning, growing stronger, developing new techniques. Or rather turning old techniques into stronger, more finished attacks. He had a full complement of anti-Sasori techniques now. Had turned the ghost stories of his youth into tools to use against the puppeteer. The rumors of human puppets and one who wielded metallic sand were probably just rumors, but Naruto was ready if they were true. He was ready with an army. He had gotten much better at crafting heartstones for his puppets. He had developed new poisons. He had put together smaller and smaller micro-puppets. And he had learned some ninjutsu and stopped hiding in bunkers all the time. Naruto, even without hauling out some of the puppets he kept in scrolls or releasing heartstones he always carried on his person, was a fucking tough fighter. He might be missing a left leg, which was a vulnerability, but no one in the last decade or so had ever managed to turn it against him. Damn that foolish Hokage. Naruto stopped the grumpy thoughts and sat down to play with his little nephew, Usagi. The other guests would be directed outside to the rear terraces. Naruto could spend some time inside, getting into character like some sort of kabuki entertainer. "Naruto," a woman's voice said, "it's so good to see you." "Kaniji, a pleasure. I can't believe you let him throw this horrible party. He loves to entertain, what can I say?" As much as number 3 loved his wife, she did not know about who Naruto really was. She did know that her husband was a retired ninja, though, but Naruto's secrets were his own. She thought the man was merely an older adoptive brother of her husband. "Am I very early? Not for this thing. The invitations say 1 o'clock. But the ghost starts showing at noon. Thankfully I didn't get an invite, just a verbal show up then kind of thing. Yes, for having money, my husband hasn't much adapted to its strictures. Unlike your family, he did not come from money." Kaniji was the youngest daughter of a local daimyo, child number 17 of 19. She had to marry well or she wouldn't have had a pot to piss in. That was when number 3 walked into the room. "Naruto, how nice of you to come early. Have some lunch." "Thank you, Saiki. I would enjoy that. Grab up that handful of trouble and let's find some food." The meal was pleasant. Kaniji talked about some of the guests who would be coming. Saiki mocked them. Usagi put everything within reach in his mouth. If it wasn't food, he'd pull it out and throw it. Hard. Usually at Naruto. Instead of feeling irritation, it made Naruto feel joy. It was a fun distraction to keep from thinking about an uncertain future. He was powerful in a military sense, but Madara or Pain would likely beat him in a straight fight. He worried about the power he was trying to accumulate in other disciplines. Intelligence power, economic power, such as this estate run by number 3, and eventually political power. The strongest ninja in the world couldn't fight very well if the power that be decided to starve him out, deprive him of resources, use artillery to bombard his likely locations. Political power, such as his identity of a tea country warehouse manager getting elected village mayor, took time to build but then it began to repay the investment, maybe. Too many moving pieces, too many ways to go. Should he try to out-shinobi these Akatsuki? Or should he engineer an embargo on Rain Country, where all the rumors put these strangely powerful ninja at various times and places? Or invent a war between Earth and Rain? Those rock ninja were such bastards it wouldn't take much provocation. No, this was better, simpler. Getting pelted with silverware and having a nice restful meal. "So, which of these young ladies coming are on the hunt for a husband?" Kaniji just laughed. "For someone of sufficient means, like yourself, my brother-in-law, all of them." The young ladies, looking to impress, would serve up their best stories, the best fodder. Naruto found all these people throwing themselves at him distasteful. But he had to gather intelligence and sometimes gossip was more suggestive than cold hard fact. The world had changed. It was hard keeping track of things some days. Conventional truths weren't always useful anymore. Things were different. Naruto was now 18 years old, even if his character was 27. Jiraiya of the Sannin had been the 5th Hokage in Hidden Leaf for just over 2 years. The legend of Taro of the River got bigger with every passing month. Number 3 had taken a public name Namikaze Saiki, a fairly common surname in these parts, but meant more as a tribute to Naruto's true heritage, and settled on a large tract of land in River Country, with his wife and 9-month-old son, effectively retiring as a ninja. But in fact serving as the deepest cover type of operative. It was all to a purpose. Sasori still breathed air he should not be entitled to. Naruto hadn't invented a painkiller or Madara killer even after years of trying. The military power seemed too fragile, too little as Naruto began to understand the wider world. That hadn't been an easy conclusion to draw. But Naruto had exhausted what he knew of military might. Had even had a fucking visit with the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The short answer. The beast was useless for Naruto's purposes, save for permitting Naruto an almost limitless amount of chakra. Even that came at a cost. Naruto had to fight all the time to maintain excellent chakra control. If he went a day without using chakra cables, the next day was twice as hard to work the technique. Plus, aside from the Kyuubi in his mind addressing Naruto as a damned cripple, when Naruto attempted to test the demonic chakra as Gaara had done at the Chunin selection exams, his body was racked with pain, specifically the stump of his left leg. It was almost as if the Kyuubi was attempting, and failing, to regrow the leg. The Kyuubi's power was useless for the puppeteering lifestyle and for someone with a massive disability. These 3 years hadn't yielded much. The killer techniques hadn't materialized. He seemed stuck in a rut. He maintained his vigilance with a wide spying network, but there hadn't been a single blip on the Sasori front. But the ninja would pop up sometime soon. The Jinchuriki were out there. Naruto was having all of them, save for the 7-tailed that he still hadn't managed to track down, watched. Number 3, his wife and child accompanied Naruto out of doors. The guests were already here. Naruto, introduced as Namikaze Yan or Naruto to his friends, a little joke of number 3's, met with every buxom woman in the crowd. He heard many stories. Ninja exploits tended to be particularly bandied about in civilian areas, whereas ninja tended to tell mocking stories of their opponents or their political masters, Hokages and daimyos. My older brother just came back from a ninja village, you know, a young blue-haired girl exclaimed, twittering the whole time. The village hidden in the waterfall. It sounded so interesting. Really, Yan said. Is he a trader or a merchant of some type? Yes, he was buying animal skins to make into leather. It was just total luck he heard about hidden waterfall and their need to sell a massive skins. He couldn't take any pictures, of course, as they insisted it was a military location and very secret. He only got to see a little bit of the place, but he said it was massive. A couple thousand people could live inside the caves they use. A village inside caves. That sounds very uncomfortable, Yan said, playing up his role as a young nouveau riche noble. Yeah, I'd think so, but he said it was very nice. They somehow got light in from outside. And he just took in everything. All the ninja everywhere. Had never seen so many all different kinds of headbands. Like a good noble, time to flaunt some knowledge and verify if this girl was just making up stories out of whole cloth. Really? I thought each kind of headband belonged to a different village. I don't know about that. But my brother described a few of them. They sounded very different, except all of them had a long line running through the middle of the design. Naruto's first thought was missing ninja. This was an interesting tip. Perhaps. If I ever get up that way, I'll try to see if they'd give me a tour. That got the girl laughing, as ninjas didn't give tours. Can I get you another drink? Yan asked. The party continued for hours. Indeed, it was growing dark before number 3 got efficient in suggesting that people head off for the night. It had been a garden party during the afternoon, not a dinner party. Dinner was for family only. As Naruto was digging into the main course, roasted fish and vegetables, he got a blast of information in his mind from a dispelled shadow clone. The spy network had turned up a lead at long last. The one-tailed Jinchuriki, Sabaku no Gaara, had been kidnapped. The puppet assigned to Suna had actually caught sight of Sasori's battle puppet. Saiki, can I talk to you? Is everything alright? Number 3 stood and began moving from the dinner table. In the hallway leading to the main door, Naruto explained the new information. Saiki looked apologetic and began to speak, but Naruto waved him quiet. This is no longer your fight. You have a child and this cover to maintain. I will handle the battle. You work on the wealth accumulation. You are working on another type of power for our plans. Be careful, sensei. As much as I can. XXXXXXXXXX. It was only hours from river country into wind and a few more hours to meet up with the shadow clone, attempting to track Gaara's kidnappers. The shadow clone doing the tracking dispelled. They were in a cave. As Naruto assimilated the memories, he realized he was close, very close, only 2 kilometers away. He began to run as he prepared mentally for battle. Sasori was likely very close, as well as his Akatsuki partner. The puppeteer used to be partnered with Orochimaru and had been partnered with that terrorist bomber from Hidden Rock before Naruto captured Itachi. Now, who knew who the partner might be? He catalogued his resources. He had a variety of puppets and scrolls. He had heart stones in a wide variety of styles. He had poisons and micro-puppets and some devastating ceiling array monstrosities and a few special surprises designed for someone like Sasori. He had the flowing Red Death. It had worked against Kisame and Itachi, but Sasori was likely a whole class above those other ninja. It was a last resort. He tried not to think of how badly things would have to go before needing to use that technique. He ran. He cleared his mind. The longer these bastards had control of Gaara, the less likely a good outcome was possible. He fought the battle in his head and hoped that the art of war would serve him well this day. As Naruto arrived at the cavern entrance, a blonde ninja emerged. Deidara, if Itachi's descriptions were accurate. Another puppeteer, yeah. My art is better than anything you can put together, Jinchuriki. Sasori knew about Naruto as a puppeteer. Naruto hadn't been sure, but now it was obvious. The spy master who had captured number 2 would have extracted everything possible before killing her. I've studied your art as well, Rock Ninja. Perhaps y'all like my advances. Naruto swiped blood across a ceiling scroll and threw the thing at Deidara. A second later, a startled Kabuto appeared in a poof of smoke. When he was 15 feet away from Deidara when he hit the ground, the hundreds of exploding seals on Kabuto's body all exploded at the same time. Naruto was a good ways away and it still threw him off his feet. Deidara had been preparing a clay monstrosity, an explosive of some sort, but he was blown into the hard stone around the cavern's mouth. The half-formed explosive remained on the ground. Deidara was bleeding from his mouth and ears. Naruto went on the offensive. His chakra strings invaded Deidara's body. It paralyzed him and then brought him up and began moving him as if he were severely injured. Something darkened the cavern entrance and then waved at Deidara. The former rock ninja limped over slowly, shaking a bit and weaving. The blood was genuinely cascading from his mouth, nose, and ears. He was dying from the shock of the explosion. But, as long as he was alive, Naruto could use him. Other chakra strings began etching on Deidara's flesh underneath his cloak. He wouldn't be able to cover the Akatsuki member in 500 seals, as Kabuto had been, but had managed a few before Deidara reached the end of the line. It wasn't a surprise when the plan failed. Sasori was good enough to detect the foreign chakra in Deidara's body. Naruto didn't know exactly what had happened, but he felt Deidara's body almost disintegrate. From where the chakra strings had been, Deidara lost the entire left side of his body. A few moments later, Naruto had his answer. A pale ninja in a black cloak emerged at the mouth of the cavern. He wasn't human, not any longer. He had a preserved sheen to him. The rumors about Sasori's experiments with dead ninja were true. Even when he'd been a mere kid visiting Suna once a week, people in the hidden village passed around stories like this as campfire fodder to scare the kids. But it wasn't a horror story. It was true. When a blast of blackish-grayish sand erupted from his cloak pockets, Naruto had his final confirmation. The third Kazekage had been turned into a puppet. Naruto had long prepared for this possibility. Naruto drew a long thin scroll from his pocket. His already bleeding thumb wicked across it. Ugly matte black stones tumbled to the ground. Naruto attached chakra strings to them and threw a volley of 6 each as heavy as an ancient-style cannonball at the human puppet. The metal grains flew out of their controlled attacking formation and stuck inches deep to each of the magnets. The magnets thudded with some force against the human puppet and stuck. The human puppet was almost knocked off his head with the force. It wasn't a perfect defense. Naruto had to duck and dodge the smaller amount of metallic sand that flew at him. He knew better than to let any of it touch him. A few hundred grains of that stuff, properly controlled, could flay the skin off his bones. More chakra propelled magnets into the stream of the sand. Naruto used up another 5 magnets, capturing what he could. He could only hope that the human puppet was out of sand, that he could destroy this puppet and move on to its master, but that was too optimistic. Sasori was still inside the cavern, of course. He was a thinking opponent. Had just seen one of his most powerful creations neutralized. The human puppet withdrew back into the cave. Naruto had his remaining dozen magnets arrayed around his body in case of another sudden attack. But this time a familiar hateful visage filled the doorway. It was Sasori himself and his battle puppet. You have the luck of the damned, Uzumaki. Shall we see what kind of destruction we can create? Naruto asked. The Sasori puppet shook its massive head from side to side. Such a stupid ninja, but such good fortune. I myself made it impossible to continue my important work. We're down quite a few rings thanks to you, but we needed Deidara's for our festivities today and I just shredded it with my puppet's metallic sands. Your cleverness in getting me to attack my colleague has saved you this day. I must withdraw immediately, but I will enjoy watching you wither and die very soon. He'll be back for Gaara later. For now, Hess yours. Try not to let him die. We still need the Shukaku. The massive puppeteer was surprisingly fast. He disappeared even as all of his instincts were telling him to engage pursuit. But, Gaara was still inside. Why was he left inside without a fight? Naruto wouldn't put it past Sasori to have trapped the place. Was there some other reason, something more sinister? He shelved the question and pulled out a heartstone and gave form to an earth-type puppet clone. Such an affinity would enable it to better detect and avoid any traps Sasori might have laid. He took over control and sent the puppet inside. Within minutes Naruto found and had his puppet disable 6 traps, none lethal, but all would have been severely injuring. Gaara was deep inside the cave and not conscious. It was an odd room, set up for a ritual of some sort. The puppet surveyed the room, allowing Naruto to get some idea of its shape and dimensions, and checked again for traps. The puppet scooped up Gaara and carried him out. The small young man shifted a bit when he entered the dying light of the afternoon. Naruto formed up a pair of shadow clones which were far less resistant than his puppet clones and might have been injured disarming a trap and had them carry Gaara. He did this to maintain the secrecy of the puppet clone technique. When he dispelled the puppet, he stooped over and picked up the heartstone. One made for permanency could be reused again and again. It was only those made quickly for the flowing red death technique that had a single use. Naruto and his unconscious rescuee set out into the desert, not toward Suna. The place and its protections didn't exactly inspire confidence at this time. No, Naruto would take Gaara the current Kazekage to a bolt hole to rest up and heal. And to answer some questions. An agitated Gaara woke up an hour after he was tucked into a safe house on the edge of the river fire border. Naruto had doped him with a chakra-disrupting serum, so he didn't launch an immediate attack. Who are you? He sounded like a small, terrified boy, rather than a Kazekage. Fear could do many things, few of them good. I may look different now, Lord Kazekage, but you know me. I adjusted your seals years ago. Taro? You look nothing like Taro. Naruto laughed at Gaara's tone of voice. Even the Kazuki seemed to be a fan of Taro's legend. The man Wad stopped a demon, killed the snake Sannin, and done who knows what else. It had been perfect to use Jiraiya to stage Taro's death. The gossipy man had spread around what he knew of Taro long before he realized that the battle was too strange, too staged. Their brother is a puppeteer or was some years ago. I am also a puppeteer, self-taught. Taro was one of my creations. I rode inside him and appeared to the world as a tall, experienced ninja when I was in truth a 14-year-old kid. Gaara's open mouth was just a bit funny. No. No, puppeteers can't do that, can they? Kankuro can't. It's a choice. Your friend Sasori, here Gaara's face darkened and tiny fragments of dirt and sand on the floor began to move haltingly, rides in the belly of his puppet, if my sources are correct. Your brother carried his puppet on his back, Sasori's puppet and my former puppet carried each of us around. Naruto was not about to admit that he could control puppets remotely from a great distance. But it was no great loss to admit that he had once rode around inside Taro to help disguise his age after all. It was a technique he planned never to have to use again. One was only pitifully young once. Why did you save Na? How did you know I was gone? Gaara was smarter than Naruto remembered. He wasn't Kazuki just because of his demonic tenant. Naruto paused before answering. It wasn't a pleasant answer no matter how he sugar-coated it. I placed a spy in Suna. I knew that the Akatsuki were uncommonly interested in Jinchuriki, so I had someone watching you. He caught the last bits of your abduction, contacted me, and sent someone to follow along behind you to see where they took you. Gaara got angry at this. You expected them to do this? To try to kill me? Naruto shrugged. Yes. And you had a spy in my village? For how long? Years. A spy in my village for years and I didn't know about it. I know about all the spies. I know who reports back to Iwa and who to Kusa and who to Kumo. I know this because it's my business to know this. But I did not know about your spy. What are you, whatever your name is? For now, call me Taro. It will save questions. The no long scared Kazuki looked ready to kill something. Tell me about these Akatsuki. They value the power of the Biju. My spy does not know what they will do with them once they're collected, but he knows it is to be some type of weapon. There are supposed to be 9 or 10 members all told, and I just learned a few hours ago about the special rings they wear. My primary spy had withheld that information from me. They aim to kill you and take the Shukaku, if you didn't already understand that. Who? Who are they? Their captors. One was a fellow Suna ninja, Akasuna no Sasori. That was really him, wasn't it? Until recently, I thought it was just a bad tale that parents would tell their children. If you misbehave, Sasori or Gaara will get you. Ah, but you are real, Gaara. Just as Sasori is real. I understand. Now. But I do not know why I am in this cave. Assuming we weren't watched or followed 50-50th chance I'd say this will keep you safe for the immediate future. You needed to rest and heal. And we needed to have this conversation, Lord Kazuki. You weren't telling me something. There is a price for your help, I assume. Yes, there is a price. But you get to choose what y'all pay. It isn't a permanent cost, either. So, you will either nominate a deputy to serve Suna until Akatsuki is dealt with and go into hiding or I will nominate a deputy on your behalf and you will go into hiding. What? The choices are clear. I have made a horrible mistake leaving the Jinchuriki actually exposed to the Akatsuki, a mistake I shall remedy. I wanted to use you as a type of bait so that I could stalk my own prey, but I almost allowed Sasori to gain what he wanted at the cost of your life. It is too dangerous even for someone like you to be out in the world as that man has probably spent some years preparing to confront you in addition to his normal range of skills. Had probably developed special ways of dealing your sand as I put together ways of dealing with his best known weapons. Shortly all the Jinchuriki I know of, save that blasted eight-tail who must be gifted at evasion, will be safe and replaced in their public lives by acceptable surrogates. Gaara had nothing to say. He did wave his arm, expecting a wall of sand to attack this crazy person speaking with him. Nothing happened. Stop it. Your chakra is disrupted for a period of time. How? A mild poison refined by Tsunade of the Sannin. I stole a set of her private lab books from Konoha many years ago. The Hokage had them among his personal papers in his office when Naruto ransacked it. Kabuto, before his well-deserved demise, had further refined Tsunade's formulation but Gaara didn't need to know that. The poison won't last forever. When it wears off, I'm gone and you've got yourself an enemy, Taro. Well, I'd rather avoid that last bit. Why don't I let you observe a few things? You can make up your own mind about how to assist with the Akatsuki. If you have a well-informed third option, I am not averse to letting you help. Gaara nodded. Naruto felt a bit of pride. Had tried to think of a way to force Gaara and the Suna forces to help against the Akatsuki. It never worked in the mental wargames he played but this did. He forced Gaara off the field and the young Kazuki would do anything to return to the war. XXXXXXXXXX. Sasori finished his report to the leader and the other members. Few of them understood the problem with another destroyed ring. The technique of the demon sealing statue was a secret to almost everyone, even many of the main Akatsuki members. Orochimaru's betrayal still guided many security decisions in the organization. The leader understood the problem with the missing rings. Beyond him, the dope Toby hiding a vicious Uchiha Madara understood even better. "That is disappointing," the leader said. "Inform us why you left the one tail behind. It has set our plans back." "I understand, leader. But I needed a bone to throw to a rabid dog." "Certainly you, Sasori, could have handled this ninja," Haiden said in an almost respectful tone of voice. "He had just disabled my most powerful human puppet. With that puppet I could have used the magnetic sands to restrain the one tail, as iron sand can beat the traditional sand he could call upon and provide for a safe escape route. Without it, I had to give the nine tails a reason to remain behind while I fled." "No one's that strong," Haiden said, far less respectful this time. "Send me. Send Kakuzu. We're not afraid of a damn thing. Toby thinks Sasori is the best." The odd little muppet seemed to point an accusing finger at Haiden. "Well, Jashin thinks Toby would be a good offering. Shall I come to the cavern Yaorin right now and give you to my lord god? Toby thinks Haiden is a bad ninja." With that, Toby squeezed his hand and 100 kilometers away Haiden's throat was crushed. "And now Haiden is off with Jashin." The leader shook his head at Toby but said nothing. Over the years, Toby had killed 3 Akatsuki who annoyed him. It made recruiting rather difficult once a few stories got out. Evil ninja of a certain caliber tended to trade stories rather than exchange blows when they occasionally got together to drink and gossip. Once Gogo of the Claw and Hiro Takeda from T-Country mysteriously died, rumors got out about the last clients each of them had worked for. People stopped responding to queries from a plant-headed man formerly of Grass Country. If Haiden's death got out or if Haiden were missed by outsiders, it would hard to refill the gaps in the organization. They had no swordsman of Kisam's caliber now even years after his death. They had a powerful Uchiha and Madara, but they didn't have anyone with such a public reputation as Itachi. Now, Deidara and Haiden were dead, both killed by Akatsuki members. Konan, Zetsu, Kakuzu, Madara, Pain, and Sasori were all that remained. The unstoppable plan Madara had presented all those years ago to serve Pain's goals, world peace enforced at the edge of a kunai, had ground to a halt. It was no longer unstoppable. Some days Pain wondered whether it was a mistake to have gone with Madara's plan. There were days when Pain wondered if that bastard Uchiha cared for anything other than the nine-tailed fox. He seemed bored when the others were discussed, but the hunt for Uzumaki Naruto always got Toby interested. Bakuzu finally broke the awkward silence. "Deal with Toby later, leader. For now, I wish to discuss my former homeland, Hidden Waterfall. We've assembled the mercenaries there. We're paying them now from our treasuries but we're not getting any value from them. I propose to journey there to train them." Leader listened and then nodded. "An excellent proposal. With the increasing difficulty of sealing the Bijuu, we may need to fall back to a less desirable plan. Unleash hell on the world and then offer protection. We can bankrupt the elemental nations, send them into poverty, and destroy their ability to wage war forever. The caveat is that we won't have the ultimate weapon in reserve as a threat, however." Toby started up again. "Toby thinks the Bijuu are pretty. Toby thinks Akatsuki should have the Bijuu, so much pretty chakra." "Thank you, Toby," leader said. "But we've delayed matters for a decade already. It is time to begin. Well, train the mercenaries and harden them, equip them with chakra armor and the rest. Then the other members can work on acquiring the Bijuu. It is foolish to hold off on both parts of the plan just to acquire the Jinchuriki." Toby looked agitated but said nothing further. "Bakuzu will go, as will I. And Toby. Sasori will begin putting out feelers to recruit more senior members. Zetsu will take up surveillance on the one tail. We had to release him once, I would be sure we can reacquire him on demand. When we return from Waterfall we will reassign teams and track down the Bijuu quickly." "What about the rings?" Konan quietly asked. Even though leader hadn't said anything to her, she knew what her task was: to keep an eye on Madara's plots and plans. "We will need to redesign the jutsu. The rings speed up the technique and allow several persons to be involved. There are alternative methods, slower methods that we could use. I will think on it." Leader stopped talking and looked at the ghostly images in front of him. Fatigue was setting in amongst his troops. Dismissed. The images faded out. Pain wondered again if he should get rid of all this and return to his original plan. Have Konan and the 6 paths of pain perform the devastation needed to effect peace. Mercenaries and money, levels and stages and plots, blah, it was all too convoluted. Peace through hellish, unrelenting war. That was a contradiction Pain could understand. East Realm could summon hellish animals until the Shinigami ate everyone's soul. God Realm, well, that path could do most anything. The other paths could lay waste to a country each. It was an alternative plan. Perhaps he'd be able to speak with Konan about it soon. Madara was getting increasingly unstable. If Uchiha Madara had to die for Pain's plan to work well, Pain could find a way to kill Madara this time. XXXXXXXXXX. Jiraiya, Goddamn Hokage, took the unusual step of leading the small force himself. His spy network had let him know of Gaara's kidnapping, and he had mobilized the force within hours. Head had to reassign several missions and recall a few people only a couple of hours outside of Hidden Leaf. The small expeditionary force had himself, 7 Jounin, and 4 Chunin in it. Tsunade, along with the Sandaime, were taking care of things back in Hidden Leaf. One of Jiraiya's first acts was to recall Tsunade, pay off her gambling debts, and install her in the hospital to remedy the various turf wars and training debacles they had going on there. The slug Sannin hadn't been happy but she had returned in exchange for the debt forgiveness. The problem was that the Hokage and his force arrived in Suna about the same time when a strange-looking ninja helped Gaara off a medical litter held up by shadow clones and escorted him to the gate. "Azakiage," Jiraiya said. An extra pale young man turned around and nodded his head. "Lord Hokage, what brought you here?" "I thought our ally had a problem," the Hokage said. "Our alliance is strained at best. The reparations Hidden Leaf demanded after the invasion have destroyed our economy to this day. Then this. Don't tell me you had a spy in my village." Jiraiya almost took a step back at Gaara's vehemence. "I won't. You are here," Gaara said. "You might as well come in. Do you wish to attend, Taro?" That got Jiraiya's attention. The small young man didn't look anything like that massive Taro puppet head fought and killed all those years ago. Was this what his godson looked like? It was possible to see a bit of Minato in this young man maybe. "I will stay for a moment to ensure you are well situated, Lord Kazukiage." Jiraiya began to fling out questions immediately, but Gaara waved them away. He walked away into the village in silence. 5 minutes later the group was sealed in the Kazukiage's office. Gaara nodded at Jiraiya and the older ninja let loose. "What the hell happened?" "My source said had spotted Sasori. And then I get here and you're back." Gaara frowned. "Sasori was here. I was kidnapped. This ninja, Taro, apparently has a better spy network as he arrived to rescue me more than a day ago." Jiraiya stared at the tallish blonde ninja. You were the puppeteer who kept me prisoner all those months." Naruto just nodded. "The Sandaime Hokage told me your real name. You kept asking me about Uzumaki Naruto about why I never helped him when he was younger and you are Uzumaki Naruto." Naruto shrugged and did not bother to correct the man about his proper family name. "Old man, don't make me regret sparing your life. You were useful to spread the story of how You'd killed Taro, my main puppet identity at the time. But now you're just annoying. If it means anything I'm sorry. The Sandaime is sorry. He would like nothing more than to speak with you, Naruto." Naruto tilted his head and then sighed. "We have time for pleasantries later. We must discuss what role, if any, that Hidden Leaf will have in the upcoming operation. Throw out a tantalizing, confusing piece of intel and the sucker bites. Patch me up, you're talking about step 7 and I don't know what step 1 is yet," the Hokage said. Gaara smiled. "I think he meant to make you feel stupid, Lord Hokage. He is talking about following a lead that might avail us some intelligence on the Akatsuki." "I'm listening and interested. I'm unsure whether you're trustworthy, to be honest," Naruto said. "But, if Gaara." "Just tell him," the Kazukiage said. "I have some limited information on a possible Akatsuki base. It appears that they are a large mass of unconnected mercenaries have taken over Hidden Waterfall." "Oh, no," Jiraiya said. "It was a tiny village, but it had some truly beautiful women." Naruto's lips pursed in aggravation. "Gaara and I have been discussing the best way to place Hidden Waterfall under observation. I know a bit about some of their other members, but what I've heard about 2 of them leave me very nervous." "Who?" "Itachi. I could kill Itachi," Jiraiya boasted. "Your information is old, Toad Sannin. I have made Itachi my newest prisoner just like you once were. I demand you release him to me, to Hidden Leaf. He is a traitor." Naruto laughed for a brief moment. A mocking laugh. "Bullshit. Ask the other old man. What he did with full sanction. Besides, he's of more value to me as he is than anything you could offer in exchange." Jiraiya settled back down into his uncomfortable chair. "Then who? Why observe Hidden Waterfall, why not storm it with an army from leaf and sand, kill them all?" The Hokage had gotten more ruthless as head aged but he was still vastly uninformed. "Well, won't that be amusing," Gaara said. "If Naruto's information is correct, then there are a few ninja possibly at Hidden Waterfall who are an entire magnitude more powerful than anyone in this room." "Ah," Jiraiya said. Naruto waved him quiet. "Could you have battled the Shodai Hokage and not lost? One of the reputed Akatsuki did just that and another has reputedly slain Salamander Hanzo, the man who you and your 2 teammates cold bested your prime. Hanzo's dead. This is going to be a long meeting, isn't it?" Gaara asked. "I need to eat." In truth, the Gaara puppet required no food at all. But the shadow clone running the puppet decided to give Gaara a deep cover. The real Gaara was unhappily watching this conversation from a protected bunker. His comments kept the shadow clone running the conversation, from Gaara's end, correctly. The Jinchuriki was rather upset about the arrangement but he was far less vehement than the two-tail and the seven-tail. Naruto had trouble keeping enough shadow clones nearby to keep those puppets functioning. Naruto had long possessed bases near to each known Jinchuriki, so it hadn't taken much time to arrange the kidnapping operations but keeping things together was a different story. Naruto, as he refrained from injuring Jiraiya out of anger for the man's continuing arrogance, knew he needed to deal with Akatsuki quickly. Keeping 7 different Jinchuriki confined against their will was not easy and it won't last for long. Naruto tamped down his instincts just to go and deal with Hidden Waterfall himself. He was powerful, it was true, but he knew he needed some sort of ally to assist him. He had no idea what this Pain and Madara were truly capable of. He would have to trust Jiraiya at some point if he wanted to be free of this plague following him around and he would need to release the other Jinchuriki soon, as well, least one or more of them figure out a way to escape and cause some real havoc. In this AU, there is a very good reason that Grass Country expels S-rank ninja. They really are crazy, most of them. The more powerful, the crazier they get. Pain, at least, has had Konan to keep him somewhat grounded compared to Madara. Thankfully Naruto's neuroses haven't manifested like Sasori's or Madara's. More to come. Naruto had argued strenuously against bringing all of Jiraiya's ninja plus some from Suna. We're spying. 3-4 people tops. One of the haughty Konoha ninja none of whom knew who Naruto was said, it's for Lord Jiraiya's protection. So this travesty had spent more than a full day organizing itself and then moved at half the speed Naruto could by himself. He began to get a sense of what having allies could mean. It had been much better to have students. But the 4-man cell, Naruto had devastated an entire country over the course of a few months and, with a 2-man cell, lured out Orochimaru and killed him and banished many of his snake summons away. After Orochimaru's death, Naruto and number 3 had spent a bit of time lacing poisoned water sources with the poison neutralizer. With just 4 good ninja, he could cause and eventually remediate devastation. With 20 they moved like a snail. The group had made a camp. On a recon mission, what folly 4 miles into the border of Hidden Waterfall. Now, nearly 3 days after Naruto volunteered the information, a team of almost 20 ninja were spying on not much at all. Hidden Waterfall was actually the most hidden of any ninja village, relying on a cave system with protected secret entrances. Jiraiya and 2 of his jounin were surveying the southern portion of the hill that had the main entrance hidden behind a beautiful waterfall. Gaara and some of his ninja were monitoring the northeastern portion, along with the best view of the falls. Naruto and some Leaf volunteers, none of whom Naruto wanted, were sitting on the northwestern portion. In the past 3 hours only a small handful of people had disappeared into the waterfall that was rumored to obscure the village. Then Naruto twisted to look at what another Konoha ninja was pointing at. A Leaf ninja with Jiraiya's group was sneaking out from the protected forest area the kilometer or so from the base of the hill that contained Hidden Waterfall's caverns. What is Jiraiya thinking? Naruto asked. He got no response. But as he watched, he saw Jiraiya's response. The goddamn Hokage ran after the ninja and tried to return him to the protected cover. That just made the rogue ninja run faster. Soon both were climbing the stony face of the hill. This man is a Sannin and the Hokage, and he couldn't think of a sneakier way to stop an errant ninja. Naruto had more to say, but the explosion at the top of the hill stopped him. But the look of horror, the solid stone top of the mountain, at least a third of it, cracked and collapsed onto the caverns underneath. Naruto saw a flying toad with a white-haired man clutching onto it. At least Jiraiya had escaped. But unless that collapse had killed or injured a great many of the ninja inside, this was about to get ugly. Like what happened to a dull-minded child poking at a wasp nest with a stick. Whoever wasn't dead inside would soon be streaming outside to deal with the problem. And, if Naruto's intelligence was right, there were some powerful mercenary ninja inside. Jounins from villages all over the elemental countries, powerful fighters from village-less clans, and plenty of murdering bastards freed from every prison imaginable. Individually Naruto could best any or all of them, but in a quantity of several hundred or a few thousand, that was a different story. Even the flowing red death, his most prized and secret technique, had scaled to kill only 300 at a time. He did use chakra cables to control them, but each red death puppet clone required more than 10 individual chakra strings to control it. He wouldn't easily be able to deal with that many by himself. A real Gaara could kill hundreds with the right sand technique, but the Gaara sitting across the way was much less powerful. We need to leave now, Naruto said to the Leaf Nins performing surveillance with him, or was it on him? Not until we know Jiraiya-sama is safe. You can leave if you are scared, little. Another unfinished statement. It wasn't an army that appeared on the field. Now, it was a slight pale woman with her hair tied up wearing a black cloak with red clouds. And a little ninja wearing a bizarre orange mask. And another ninja. Oh, right, Itachi had identified him as Kakuzu. This expedition was doomed then. Free Akatsuki. One immortal, Uchiha Madara, and someone with a Rinnegan, which was still mostly a mystery even after years of trying to learn of its effects. The woman surveyed the destroyed mountain and then seemed to track the different locations where Konoha ninja and Suna ninja were stationed. A few seconds later, she did some unusual hand signs and slammed her hand into the ground. 5 more ninja were now standing around the girl. Naruto had seen many things in his time, but he had never seen a ninja summon another ninja. He took a second to create a few dozen cage bunshin, which immediately ran away from Naruto. They encircled the half-destroyed hill within a few minutes, while the orange-masked ninja and one of the dark-haired summoned ninja spoke and hinged into other things, rocks, branches, and the like. When Naruto fled, he still wanted to observe what happened. Once his spies were in place and the Akatsuki had made up their minds, Naruto gave one last warning retreat. And then shined away. Naruto was worried about Jiraiya, as the man was a powerful ninja, but the Jounin head brought along hadn't impressed Naruto. The real Gaara would be just fine, even if the puppet version of him was in danger. Naruto thought he was in the clear until he felt something powerful shunshin behind him. He leapt and avoided a kunai to the spine. The orange-masked freak Itachi said this was Uchiha Madara's disguise was fast and not given to long speeches. A true ninja. Naruto heard something like an explosion in the distance. He hoped the Konoha nin had finally had the sense to flee. Naruto banished a few hundred micro-puppets at Uchiha Madara. The first few landed, but the others passed right through. That was some kind of ultimate defense phasing out of reality. Naruto shined again and tumbled away from his landing spot. Again. He hoped that the minuscule amount of chakra poison and 1 or more micro-puppets worth of optic nerve poison had stalled Uchiha Madara. He took a moment to breathe, to calm down. He hadn't felt this kind of terror even when he killed Orochimaru with his puppets. Why did this feel so different? Was being exposed like this worth it? He could do just as much running a puppet again from the safety of a bunker. He felt a shunshin slower and more wasteful and somersaulted forward. As he was upside down, he shined again and rolled to the ground in his new location. That damned Madara was stalking him now. Naruto dropped a few slips of paper and then waited to feel the incoming shunshin. When he felt the chakra memorizing it so he could always identify Madara in the future by chakra feel alone, he rolled again, this time to the left and shined. As he disappeared, the chakra string connecting Naruto to the papers was severed, intentionally. Just as Madara materialized, the papers beneath and to his sides released their contents. An explosive gas, a poison gas carrying even more deadly on this vapors. Madara avoided the physical blast, but the micro-puppets that remained behind reported Madara began to cough. That was good to know. Excellent, in fact. The ninja could very well be impervious to physical or chakra attacks if he could see them coming, but even he needed to breathe. That was the first bit of good news Naruto had received since returning Gaara to Hidden Sand. Naruto kept shunshining his way on a bizarre path out of waterfall. He monitored the micro-puppet surrounding Madara, but was unable to harm him again. He remained intangible for the moment, but he wasn't pursuing. Instead, he seemed to be wheezing rather fiercely. The poison was a nuisance that any med-nin could neutralize, but the spores Naruto had used were from a plant native to grass country. They began to break down in the presence of liquid. Some farmers or ranchers feared natural anthrax in their country. Farmers in grass country feared the spined purple fern above all else. As the spores took dissolved in the liquid inside Madara's lungs, each one released a trio of toxic chemicals, which aided the spore's growth. Within a few hours, the spore would be a full-fledged mold. Within 2 days, the mold would have grown enough to fill a lung. There was a rather simple way to kill the spores, however. If Madara thought to pump steam down his throat, it would kill the spores within seconds, but not the mold. But it would likely also sear the inside of his lungs and throat, killing him. Which was worse? The disease or its cure? And would Madara even realize the solution before it was too late to solve anything without needing new lungs or a replacement of all his internal organs? Naruto made it to border, the agreed upon rend of his location, and waited. It would be a long wait. Naruto gave up after 2 hours and continued on a zigzagging path to keep clear of Madara or his cronies. As he continued his escape, he wondered what had happened to make that portion of the hill collapse and, second, how to make use of this new knowledge about Uchiha Madara. Would the paranoid little man start wearing a rebreather under his mask? Naruto didn't kid himself that a lungful of mold would be enough to kill someone like Madara. No, he'd have a medic nin who wouldn't be able to kill the mold but who could remove the infected lung entirely. This wouldn't be fatal, but it would be painful. Naruto needed to have something or other as a backup. But to neutralize Madara, Naruto didn't necessarily need to kill him, did he? For the first time since Naruto had heard the name Uchiha Madara, he was able to smile. There might be a solution to this part of the problem. Maybe. XXXXXXXXXX. Itachi looked up pointlessly when he heard stone on stone. His captor, Naruto, had returned. Life as a blinded, useless hulk did not agree with Itachi in the slightest, but it was better than death. He would answer Naruto's questions and get the boy to leave. That ninja bothered him and there was nothing else Itachi could do to relieve his irritation. "You've been holding out on me, Ichiha scum." The tone of voice was nothing like his previous interactions with Naruto. "What do you mean? How about the importance of the Akatsuki rings?" Itachi shrugged. "They're used in a ritual of some sort. I never participated in one, so it was all theoretical to me." "Bullshit. You wouldn't have put something like that on your finger without having a very good idea of what it did." "I don't buy this, I'm an innocent Uchiha business for a moment. Why are you so agitated?" Itachi did not care to discuss what little he knew of the rings and what larger body of suspicions he had about them. He still hoped that Akatsuki would capture and kill Naruto through the ritual. He still held out a small sliver of hope that one of his compatriots or even an Anbu squad from Konoha would find him. Being in a prison with others would be better than the solitary existence. Anything would be better. "I finally met this Uchiha Madara. You didn't tell me anything useful about him. He is beyond formidable. Far beyond Sasori, right? As I said all those years ago. Perhaps. He has an excellent defense but I know little still about his attacks. Why don't you fill me in? He has things beyond my capabilities. I do know he possesses the Mangekyo Sharingan but I do not know what he has uncovered about it. He was the one who taught me how to access my basic abilities. I am sure he kept much to himself." That wasn't entirely the truth but this ninja would take what he was given and leave. "There were some details you left out about this leader character. He can summon himself or copies of himself or human puppets." Itachi shrugged. As much as he knew about Madara, he knew almost nothing about the leader, only that the leader in single combat had fallen to Madara. Madara had never said what had done to bring the other powerful ninja to heel. "I do not know anything about leader's abilities." "Fine. Let's play this game. You've starved a bit. Your water tap stays on but no one will bring you food until I return in a week. We'll see if hunger loosens your tongue, Itachi." Naruto left the room before Itachi could even respond. When he shouted after his captor, he heard only footsteps receding. It would be a hungry week. Itachi had done the right thing in the negotiation, but Naruto was playing by a different set of rules. XXXXXXXXXX. Uchiha Madara, dressed as a half-wit named Tobi, walked through the devastation inside the caverns of Hidden Waterfall. He killed any man wounded too much to be of further use to him. Mercenaries could be hired for a few thousand ryo, Jounin ranked missing nin for 10,000 a month. Hiring a new crop would be expensive, but better than having to pay a bunch of cripples. Weakness. If there was one thing he called to bide it was weakness. As Mizukage, he had implemented the academy's training regimen. Students paired together from the moment they entered the academy who, 4 years later, were forced to face off in a fight to the death. That was motivation. The reason he was not feeding a paralytic to the nine-tail carrier and keeping him imprisoned until Pain solved the extraction procedure problem was because he felt weak right now. That bastard had done something to him. With his time-space ninjutsu, he should be invulnerable but that rabid child had still managed to land and attack several attacks if Madara was being honest with himself. Tobi jumped up and snapped another mercenary's neck under his feet. Something was happening inside his body. He'd need to find a good med-nin soon to figure out what was happening. Had been hit by small pellets at one point and was dosed with some type of powder. His body felt weaker. His muscles were beginning to feel tired. He was Uchiha Madara. He was an immortal. This punk was always slated to die but now Madara would ensure it was unusually painful. Madara had not been wounded in battle in many decades, not since the last year of his reign as Mizukage. He had bored of the position and the peasant village he led and he got sloppy. An assassin from Kumo managed to land a single attack before the water in his body vaporized and he exploded outwards everywhere. He wasn't overly fond of pain or illness or of any type of weakness. Madara spotted one of Pain's bodies and jumped toward him, looking foolish and carefree, trying to keep from coughing. Tobi got to kill 3 people. Had dealt with the Jinchuriki spying compatriots before pursuing the Nine-Tail. Stop it with a stupid Tobi this and Tobi that. What do you want? The Nine-Tail in a prison cell awaiting the new extraction technique you promised. I am less convinced that we need this demonic amalgamation. We need an unconquerable army, Pain said. Tobi jumped up and down for anyone watching him, but his voice was pure Madara. No, we need this weapon. We also need to ensure that no hidden village has a Jinchuriki. Our regular members are strong but the Nine-Tail likely killed Kisame and Itachi by himself and that was 3 years ago. We will not be able to assemble an army of S-rank ninja. We need the hidden villages weak enough to conquer. Our army would be worth less than warm spit if one of these damn Jinchuriki showed up and slaughtered them. You said it yourself years ago, Pain. I know. But I am reassessing. The loss of the rings. It would take us another decade or longer to reforge the statue and the rings. There are other techniques we could use, but they would probably fail against the Seven-Tail and its betters. The King of Hell technique had the advantage of using the power of the already captured Biju to help harvest the next ones. That's the reason we need to harvest the 1, 2, or 3 tail before attempting anything harder. You know all this. Why are you pushing it? Was always meant to be a tool of last resort. We would be able to use it at most once. After all, we can't enforce peace on a bunch of dead people. Thobi was quiet for a moment. I defeated 3 of your bodies in our little spar. That was before your glorious little battle with Hanzo. I was stronger then and am stronger now. That's the reason I'm in charge here. We will capture the power of the Biju. You will make this happen. Strength is the only thing that will allow us to succeed. The Pain body just shook his head. It wasn't acceptance or agreement, but it signaled no more argument. What did you think of the 9 tail? Pain asked. Mediocre skills at best. But he managed to set a couple of interesting traps with little notice. Hell have to be captured with the element of surprise on our side. An interesting assessment. I, however, am more interested in how Sasori assessed him. An unknown type of power. From the volunteer, we know he is some type of puppeteer. Puppets are nothing. Useless. Pain just smiled. We shall see, Madara. We shall see. I care not for opinions. I want results. Madara leapt away before he lost control of his need to cough. 100 meters away, he allowed his body the luxury of a cough. The deep, nasty rattling sound unnerved the ancient ninja. The 9 tail would feel pain for days for this affliction. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto took a few days before returning to Hidden Sand. He thought he had lost Uchiha Madara, but he was paranoid enough to keep to an unusual path. When he arrived he found Gaara in good condition. He also found Jiraiya almost ready to return to Hidden Leaf with his arm in a sling. Apparently had busted his hip in the whole debacle. Naruto took the time to get Jiraiya by himself before asking a few hard questions. What the fuck happened? Asked Naruto in his calmest, most dangerous tone of voice. The man I followed, the ninja I tried to stop, had been sent by my village on a suicide mission. He was to kill me. Naruto cupped his head in his hand. Why am I not surprised? Jiraiya at least sounded anguished about this realization. That a faction in his home hated him enough to attempt a clumsy assassination. When he was a quarter up the mountain I was nearly able to stop him when I took a second to summon a large toad. His tongue shot out and wrapped around the ninja. When Gama turned him around the ninja was smirking. He could make hand seals, but the self-sacrificing technique he was about to use didn't need them. I climbed on Gama, left the ninja there, and well, you saw what happened. It took a few seconds to determine that Jiraiya actually believed the story he was telling. A suicide technique strong enough to damage a large hill. What's the technique? Naruto asked. Something that the Root program dreamed up. Captured agents were supposed to kill themselves and their captors rather than submit to questioning. The bastard in charge of it. Anzo, Naruto said. Don't forget I stole the Hokage's files years ago. I know more of Konoha's dirty secrets than you do. Jiraiya scoffed at that, but continued his explanation. The bastard, Danzo, worked out a way to open the 8th heavenly gate without needing to open the other 7. All that chakra flooding the body without using the other gates, it apparently causes someone to explode, enough to take out a block of buildings or a quarter of a mountain. Why is he still alive if Hess teaching forbidden techniques like that? How many people did he kill just to figure this out? The snake Sannin got driven out for his depraved experiments. It's political, Jiraiya said. Well, what are you going to do now? Somehow this political opponent got an agent close enough to kill you while the whole thing was likely to be blamed on a failed mission. I don't know. He'll speak with Sarutobi. Naruto shook his head. Whatever you decide, you're likely to incite a civil war. It won't matter what advice you get or how you act. Your returning alive to Konoha will be the trigger. I know. Naruto laughed. Be sure to tell the old man, tell him I said hello. You could do it yourself. I'm a bit busy right now. Saying that to a man about to partake of a civil war was a bit high-handed, but it was true. Naruto hopped away and left Suna a few minutes later. Jiraiya looked at the departing young ninja and wondered if Sarutobi was right. This boy was missing a leg. Jiraiya couldn't tell. His mind quickly put the matter out mind. There was too much already going on. 25% smut, 25% anger, 25% planning, and 25% fear for what was about to happen in his home. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto didn't have much time left. He was in full countdown actually. The Akatsuki were riled up, Gaara might have to fight again, but the puppet using wind techniques could only achieve maybe 20% of what the real Gaara could. That excluded its lack of being able to assume a demonic form. It wouldn't be long before his puppets were found out for what they were. It was only a question of whether a hidden village would figure it out first or one of the protected Jinchuriki managed to escape their confinement. Naruto needed to get Sasori alone. He was a powerful ninja, but he'd be nothing compared to this pain and the Uchiha. Then he could focus on Madara. He seemed the more problematic of the final pair. But Naruto had some valuable insights about him while he still knew nothing directly about pain. Madara's time-space jutsu, his phasing out of danger, was formidable, but it had flaws which Naruto could exploit given the right conditions. Still, Sasori first. As payment for the horror committed on number 2. Puppeteer vs Puppeteer. He wanted to see how good his techniques really were against someone who'd been studying for decades. Perhaps they'd be evenly matched, but Naruto doubted it. And Naruto refused to fight fairly. He entered a safe house in Tea Country and fell asleep. Minutes later he was dreaming of an epic battle with Sasori. Then the dream changed. Even his unconscious mind knew that direct confrontation was a bit stupid. The images from then on were mixed and confusing. Naruto tossed and slept badly. Jiraiya left his few surviving Jounin in a village 15 kilometers from Hidden Leaf. Out of the platoon he took with him, only 3 had survived, and not even the strongest of the group, either. Jiraiya stopped thinking about the dead and thought about the future, which was almost as depressing. The Hokage proceeded to avoid all the patrols and sneak over the walls and into the village that had just tried to kill him. He checked on Sarutobi. The man had left in charge in his stead was still alive, reading Icha Icha in the Hokage tower, and beginning to look a bit nervous that he might have to reassume the Hokage title yet again. Jiraiya, after all, had been expected back 4 days earlier. The day was turning to night. It was time to see how far the rot known as root had spread. Jiraiya found a quiet training ground, empty until the next morning, and did a mass summoning. Every small to medium-sized toad Jiraiya knew of appeared in a massive cloud. Amaterasu, now a medium-sized toad, looked around and then spotted Jiraiya. "Why do you need all of us, Pops?" "A mission dire and grave," Jiraiya said without a lick of humor in his voice. The confused toads quieted down. "I will give each of you several seals. When it finally gets dark out, I need you to sneak." "I like to sneak," a young toad murmured. "Thank you, Gamasuchi. But the instructions aren't finished. You need to place one of these paper seals on the forehead of every Anbu and Jounin in the village." That last order pained Jiraiya, but he had no idea how long Root had been planting its fanatics in the regular ninja population, or if he needed to sequester the Chunin or even Genin of the village, too. Why? Jiraiya didn't see who asked the question. "The faction of the Hidden Leaf tried to assassinate me while I was on a mission, and now I must determine who can be trusted and who are the traitors." The toads were surprisingly quiet. More than one was confused. "Yes, I will reward each one of you if you complete this successfully." "What about the old man, your sensei?" That was from Gamakichi. "No, him I trust above all others." "And Tsunade?" "No, don't worry about her. I won't want you guys getting in trouble with the slugs either." "You got it, boss," Gamatsu said. Jiraiya then handed out the seals written on paper. There were far fewer than the total number of Anbu and Jounin registered in the village, but many of those high-level folks would be on missions. There should only be a few dozen in the village right now. "Thank you." Jiraiya leapt away. He was going to deal with Danzo personally. Amakichi opened his mouth to get everyone organized, but then closed it again. "Hey, we never asked what these things did we?" "I hope it's nothing too bad, bro," Gamatsu replied. "Me, too. XXXXXXXXXX. It's just too much of a coincidence," Naruto said for the 5th time. He was in Tea Country trying to find Sasori. Then he discovered, through one of his spy outposts, that Sasori was in Tea Country on some type of business. It smelled like a well-baited trap, but it was so rich an opportunity Naruto knew he couldn't pass on it. He knew he was being paranoid. No one knew Naruto was in Tea Country right now, but it still felt a bit too convenient. It wasn't something Naruto could pass up. Naruto took an hour to select the items and tricks he would be taking with him into battle. This would be his first time really battling a puppet master. Neutralizing the 3rd Kazekage hadn't really counted. Now Sasori would probably know of Naruto's likely attack and would have had time to prepare. But, for the sake of his dead student, number 2, Naruto could do no less than avenge her death. He began to move toward the exit, then he stopped. This really was too obvious. Sasori might really be on business here, but what if he were used by Pain or Madara to weaken and draw Naruto out? He was seeing plots in the shadows, he realized, but such vigilance had saved his life before. If it's Madara, yes, that might do very well. Poisons of the airborne variety apparently worked, but Naruto had stumbled upon an idea that might work even better. It took a quick trip into river country, a delay of several hours before Naruto returned fully prepared to take on Sasori and whoever else might be involved. The tea warehouse manager, one of his oldest puppet identities, had been able to keep a watchful eye on Sasori as the man waited briefly on the docks from the river traffic. He lost track of the ninja for a few hours, but eventually Sasori returned to the docks. When Sasori left, a shadow clone that helped to manage the tea warehouse manager dispelled itself, and Naruto adjusted his course. He had not wanted to start something with Sasori inside a civilian village. That was beyond foolhardy for the inevitable collateral damage it would cause. 7 kilometers outside the largest trading village, Sasori stopped. That chakra, it was what the Nine-Tail felt like. The little ninja had spies of his own. How quaint. The hunter Sasori was being hunted by another puppet master. What are you waiting for, little Uzumaki? For the right moment. Naruto's voice came from nowhere, in particular a voice-throwing technique pioneered by puppeteers in centuries past. Figures that a stupid little ninja like Uzumaki would learn such a trick. Inside his battle puppet, Sasori began to prepare. He had all of his most offensive puppets with him. But perhaps it was best to start with total devastation. The dance of the 100 puppets was his most powerful technique. Nothing that this Naruto possessed would be able to overwhelm it. As soon as Naruto showed himself, Sasori would prove to Naruto that he was indestructible. I can spare you 20 minutes. A master class in puppeteering before you die, Sasori said. A few hundred ninja, all with bright blonde hair, appeared circling Sasori. Clones of some type, obviously. None of them said anything. They just began casting jutsu. Some wind, some fire, some lightning. None used water or earth. The greater defensive elements. Sasori had never seen clones work like this before. He dodged and weaved and used chakra strings to throw rocks and other debris in the path of the jutsu. The battle puppet, while dancing and dodging, began revealing hidden compartments. Sealing scrolls fell out, chakra strings lashed out and opened them. Within a minute of the clone attacks, Sasori had his 100-man army ready. Each of these puppets was of a conquered foe, their preserved human bodies now placed into his service. Sasori had trained for a decade to be able to control all these puppets. It was the most devastating technique he or any puppeteer would ever create. With all his mechanical constructions, he was able to control the 100. His puppets pivoted and launched senbon, flamethrower attacks, and even some offensive jutsu against the clones arrayed around the field of battle. Sasori prepared for his next moves, finding that damned nine-tail when he noticed something. Every one of the blonde-haired clones, every one of them, was still there. A few had been hit and none had turned into smoke or mud or water. These weren't any type of clone that Sasori was familiar with. That was when he noticed all of the clones smiling and making hand seals. Sasori used his 100 puppets to create an impervious shield around his battle puppets. Something strange was going on. Was he trapped in Jinjutsu? This wasn't real. No, not real at all. No opponent could replicate himself like this. Clones always had a weakness. Some of these were hit and still moving. One of them had an arm burned off and it was still smiling. XXXXXXXXXX. For a man with grand political aspirations, Danzo lived a simple life. He had a small house tucked in among where the civilians lived. He had moved in here with his wife when he was a genin. As he climbed the ranks and had the means to move, he never did. His wife had died in childbirth in this house, it was said, and so Danzo never moved, as a memorial to his dead wife and daughter. He never remarried, either. Instead of a new wife, he married into the Anbu Corps. Jiraiya hoped that having all the civilian houses nearby would give Danzo some sort of leverage in this fight. Danzo wouldn't care who died, so long as he won. Jiraiya had long told Sarutobi to remove the rogue Anbu trainer. The Root division, disbanded but never truly disbanded, was an affront in a ninja division. The Anbu answered only to the Hokage, in theory, not to their disloyal trainer. Had almost convinced his student, the Yondaime Hokage, to kill Danzo. Then had worked on Sarutobi once he regained the position. Of course, upon becoming Hokage, Jiraiya didn't follow his own advice. He had permitted Danzo to live. The man had seemed to have his uses at the time. It was a mistake, a nearly fatal one. One should never become complacent around a deadly snake. Jiraiya snuck inside the house through a window he unlocked from the outside. Civilian-made structures were ridiculously simple to penetrate, odd that Danzo had never retrofitted it for security reasons. Jiraiya crawled inside as the sun finally set. The upstairs was clean, but looked like a civilian house 40 years ago did. Even the furniture was the same. Was this just a decoy home? Did Danzo really live somewhere else? The search lasted 10 minutes and turned up nothing. It was pure luck he stumbled across a hidden doorway obscure behind a wooden panel in a hall that opened onto a stairwell leading to a basement. He followed the steps slowly, continuously checking for traps. Then when he thought to count the steps had followed, he realized he was long past arriving in a basement. He checked for Jinjutsu but continued down the steps. When he landed on solid stone, he wasn't in a basement. He was in a tunnel carved from solid stone at least 50 meters underground. This was more Danzo's style. A bunker hidden underneath an innocuous home. It was another 30 meters before Jiraiya arrived at something that looked and felt like it was ninja designed. A solid steel door covered in arcane seals, acid etched into the metal. Very permanent, very strong. But the door was open. Had Danzo or one of his flunkies been waiting for Jiraiya? Was this a booby trap after all? The voice drifted out from the room behind the open door. I see that my operatives failed. Come on in, Jiraiya. This confrontation has been delayed for quite some time. Now knowing it was a trap, Jiraiya did the foolish gallant thing. He pulled the door open and stepped inside. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto had set up a base 3 kilometers from where his modified puppet clones were ringing in around Sasori. The ex-Una puppeteer had just finally realized there was something odd about these clones. They didn't die easily. Indeed, unless Sasori destroyed the randomly placed heartstone inside a clone, it wouldn't die at all. Some of these puppet clones would have to be attacked in the neck, others in the foot. Others still in the wrist or the thigh or the lower gut. Each one, randomly, vulnerable in a different spot. Naruto was able to watch what Sasori did, as he had a viewer set up to see through the eyes of a puppet clone. The concerted actions of 100 puppets working together was actually quite skilled. Naruto could achieve the same thing with his chakra cables or by using shadow clones or, well, there were several ways. Sasori had had to butcher his body to accomplish the same thing. Perhaps this was the value of the Kyuubi in his gut. He could use the red chakra without debilitating pain, but he was able to do things beyond normal human limits when it came to managing puppets. Was that the Kyuubi's unwilling gift? Sasori danced and danced. Naruto learned from the master's master class. The old scorpion knew more than even the legends reported. But Naruto had developed his skills along different paths. Sasori's master techniques relied upon stealing the power of others. Naruto had developed sealing techniques to replicate chakra coils inside his puppets without requiring a dead ninja's body. Sasori could make as many puppets as ninja he killed. Naruto, with his puppet clones, could make as many puppets as there were bits of rock, metal, or glass nearby. Sasori's mistakes which would kill him this day were fundamental. His puppets looked strong, but were hard to replace once destroyed. His skills, his butchery of his own body, were sacrifices made by an insane ninja attempting a form of immortality. Such a move always had more drawbacks than benefits. Naruto watched and baited and learned the limits of Sasori's power. Naruto had spent years preparing for this day, fearing that Sasori might be stronger than him, his techniques more profound. Now Naruto understood. Fear had kept him from pushing the battle, fear over Sasori, pain, and Madara's possible strengths and invulnerabilities. But he understood the vulnerabilities of two of them. All the studying had done it had been a waste of time. Learning was one thing, analysis of rumors another, but true experience, knowing the thing itself, was the truth. Sasori was dead once Naruto had worn out the master and tired of his final performance, his greatest masterclass. The more Sasori struggled, after all, the more Naruto learned. It wasn't the big things that were incredible like how to make a human puppet, but it was the small things. The fine techniques of how his puppets moved, of how he responded to an attack, the details that only a well-experienced master could pass on to an apprentice. Sasori would be the reigning master for a few more minutes. XXXXXXXXXX. The old ninja sat behind a metal desk in his secure bunker. The cot was folded up into the wall. It was a fine space in which to have a conversation and to have a final battle, if needed. I knew only of the one, Danzo. The operative who tried to kill me. Sarutobi should have struck you down once he learned of the suicide technique you created and trained, opening only the 8th heavenly gate. Horrible. Danzo smiled. A ninja is a weapon, a technique is but a tool. A suicide technique is valid to win a battle. Sarutobi never understood that. Or you am surprised you didn't suspect some of the others among your Jounin team. Root rarely sends just one on such a mission. This time, I sent 3. 1 to kill you. 2 sent to report back on the success or failure of the operation. None of them knew about the others. It took many years, many years, to get so many of our operatives in positions where they were no longer suspected of ties to Root. It nearly worked. You and your secrets. Enzo shrugged. And our long-term plans. I had been waiting a very long time for you to lead a mission out of the village, Jiraiya. Sarutobi hadn't done it in years, but I knew you would have to leave at some point. Too much wanderlust in your blood. Jiraiya's posture hadn't relaxed a bit. He might be a clot-headed fool, but he was still a skilled ninja staring at an enemy. I wonder why my student, the 4th, didn't kill you. He suspected you of nefarious plots that even the Sandaime didn't. Anbu are the personal weapons of the Hokage, it said. But you've had your own little brainwashed cult for more than 2 decades. I shouldn't have let you live for corrupting the Anbu like this. Yes, Minato made his dislike clear. Sarutobi always dismissed me, thinking me neutralized because of my infirmity and because of his little laws stripping me of any authority in the Anbu. Feh. As if a law would stop the rebirth of Konoha. But Minato would have been a problem. I suspect I would have died in an accident had the Kyuubi not ended his life, all the better for me. You will never be Hokage, you infirm bastard. That got Danzo to laugh. Jiraiya was just too damned earnest. I don't need to be Hokage. One of my greatest students will be Hokage after your passing, and he will know the way to restore Konoha to its greatness, with my counsel for as long as I live. I guess your lifespan will be short then. Jiraiya began to prepare a technique. It'd hold up for a moment, Toad Sage. I hadn't been sure you'd survived, but I had my suspicions, so I prepared. How would my man become Hokage with another Sannin available? With Sarutobi still alive. With Kakashi you see, you were but one problem in the field. By the end of next week, all problems will be gone. What the hell? None of your emotionless assholes could even touch Sarutobi or Tsunade. They'll agree about Sarutobi. He remains far stronger than his old age should permit. I think it's guilt keeping him alive now, guilt over the Kyuubi child's disappearance. But, with your death and Tsunade's, he will be mentally broken. Kakashi is overrated. How would you kill Tsunade? She could crush anyone coming after her. So long as no one sprays her with blood as one of my operatives did yesterday at the hospital. She's been my guest for just over a day now. Jiraiya went pale. Her hemophobia was legendary among certain circles. A Mednin afraid of blood was more than a decent joke. Tell me where she is now and it'll give you a swift death. My operatives will take care of you. Right now, every Jounin and Anbu in Hidden Leaf is unconscious. You have no operatives in Hidden Leaf. That had the ring of truth to it. For the first time since Head started this deadly dance, Danzo felt fear. He had backups behind backups, but something like this, if true, rendered most of them moot. There was still the main trap. That was still in effect. Danzo took his life in his hand and made his decision. She's waiting for you to rescue her, Jiraiya of the Sannin. Her knight on a brilliant white stallion. Where? Danzo laughed. Why should I give up my advantage in this discussion? Jiraiya moved faster than Danzo could see, and then the pain consumed his mind. One-armed Danzo, a long-standing insult uttered by his opponents, now had no arms. My patience is gone, old man. Speaker, I'll introduce you to the inside of a toad's intestines. Sasori brought his dance of 100 puppets to a halt. With his puppets in full, flowing motion, he had managed to wound a great number of the blonde clones, but it seemed only 3 or 4 had been dispelled. While each of his 100 puppets had taken damage, most severe amounts. Most of the damage was repairable. A few of his human puppets would likely never function correctly again. One poor former rain ninja was in 5 pieces and only held together because of chakra strings. He was dog meat. There was no rhyme or reason to why those particular clones were fatally wounded, either. No rhyme or reason to how they attacked. Few ninja could damage the reinforced human puppets Sasori created. They moved too quickly, flowing over and around their targets. But not in this case. Sasori knew of no technique, puppet or otherwise, that provided these results. And over many long days of discussions with his former Akatsuki partner, Orochimaru, Sasori knew and could recognize thousands of jutsu, even if the Snake Sannin hadn't been quite so forthcoming with the details of how to perform the techniques. His technique for destroying an army of samurai or a platoon of jounin had ground to a standstill against a single opponent with an unknown technique. That sent chills through the few parts of the humanity still residing within Sasori. Had overconfidence done this to him? He had feared and continued to fear Chiyo, his grandmother, for her skill. She was as good with her puppets as Sasori was. But an unknown puppeteer with students so weak they could be captured and killed, he had not feared that. Either the Nine Tails had gotten infinitely better in the years since their confrontation, or this ninja had never shown his students his true skill level. Hence, they'd never revealed it under torture. Such a conclusion had never occurred to Sasori before now. Doubt and fear were rather unpleasant side effects of the human condition. As he still possessed an all-too-human heart, Sasori found himself capable of feeling these emotions. It was unpleasant. Is the class over, Master Puppeteer? One of the clones mocked. Him just improvising an appropriate conclusion. Something truly artistic. But that the clones, en masse, dispelled. The Nine-Tail seemed to have given up. It wasn't possible, though. The Nine-Tail would want revenge. Sasori had found and killed the female student years ago and the Hunter Nin student just a few months earlier. Pity the bastard had refused to talk before dying, but Sasori expected more than this. Still, Sasori didn't look askance at a gift. He began to run for his life. This opponent was too strange, too strong for even Sasori's most prized technique. He didn't even think of fleeing back to the village, even though that might have saved him. He ran toward the north, on the shortest path back to Rain Country. That was his mistake. His failure. There was someone waiting to the north preparing to show Sasori his version of a master class. XXXXXXXXXX. The broken Danzo finally revealed where Tsunade was hidden. Rude has a front company called Akira Importing. The basement of its warehouse, that's where she is. Forgetting himself for a moment, not remembering to keep his interrogation subject alive for further questioning, Jiraiya summoned a medium-sized toad. The hungry toad, an odd one who had developed a taste for human flesh, slurped up Danzo when Jiraiya offered up the armless ninja. Sit here until your chakra runs out, Gamarantu, or until your gut stops shrieking. As he bounded from Danzo's underground bunker, he heard shrieks of pain and anger. Toad's stomachs digested very slowly, after all. Danzo would feel pain for hours before he died. It took Jiraiya less than 3 minutes to find the correct warehouse. It was silent, as all the buildings in this part of town were at this time of night. I always hoped to die in a brothel from an overstressed heart, but it seems I will be dying with all my clothes on as a shinobi. Damn Tsunade. 15 years to get over a fear of blood and she just can't do it. He took a moment to test the air around him, seeking out chakra signatures for anyone above a civilian. Fruitless. There were no ninja close by. He couldn't even feel Tsunade's chakra signature. If Danzo had lied, he might still be alive in that toad to be reinterrogated. But Jiraiya should this warehouse check to be sure. The sly Danzo might have several tricks up his sleeves. In a day filled with summonings, he performed one more. The Great Toad Spy. He was quite small by choice, but he never failed a mission. When the toad appeared, he didn't greet the toad sage or demand to know why he had been summoned, he just looked ready to take on a task. Jiraiya pointed at the warehouse. Tsunade may be in that building in a hidden basement. Find out if she's there. A pleasure, Jiraiya-sama. I will locate the slug mistress. The Great Toad Spy moved with such discretion that Jiraiya's eyes noticed his absence, but did not see where the small creature had gone. The minutes ticked by. Danzo had not said what precautions were in place, just getting the location had taken almost an hour. Now, Jiraiya was frantic but trying not to show any physical signs of his fear. She is present, Jiraiya-sama. The toad Sanin hadn't even felt or noticed the spy's return. That was an incredible skill. The news made him happy and grateful. Getting swanned out, that was a different story. Where? The entrance to a set of stairs is in the northwest corner of the building. The tunnel goes down fairly far and deep, and I think it wends its way underneath the Hokage monument. She is in a room I couldn't enter. Why couldn't you enter it? The entrance was wrapped in seals of a type I'm not familiar with. There was no door, just a force of some type keeping me out. There were no other entrances I could detect. The trap then? Most assuredly, Jiraiya-sama. Thank you for your excellent service. Please inform Gamabunta of what has happened here. If I succumb to this trap, then he must know why. The Great Toad Spy looked less impassive than usual, signaling the great alarm he must have felt. The toad was normally a model of emotional restraint. You intend to walk into a trap? I have been walking into traps all my life. This one I am just less sure about returning from. Tsunade is important to me and I have the means to give her back her freedom. I do not recommend this course of action, Jiraiya-sama. I can return to the Great Toad Mountain and find one of our seal masters to aid in this endeavor. Thank you, friend. Please tell Gamabunta. Why? Why do you risk yourself this way? I have been saving Tsunade Haim since a week after we were put on a team together. I yanked her back as a horse was going to put a hoof through her chest. Nothing's changed during the years since. I pay off her gambling debts when I can, some refuse to sell them to me, thinking it better to have a Sanin in their debt and try to keep her safe from her more self-destructive tendencies. I guess it's one of my main roles in life. The Great Toad Spy nodded and disappeared. There was no arguing with that type of love, that strength of devotion. God damn it, Senju Tsunade. If I'm getting blown to the afterlife because of this, we're going to have angelic sex together until my ghostly appendage falls off from overuse. Jiraiya continued muttering nonsensical things to himself as he carefully broke into the warehouse. Even now, he didn't know how the Great Toad Spy had gotten in. There were no broken windows or tracks in the dust. That ancient tiny toad knew more about sneaking and peeping on targets than Jiraiya would ever be able to master. He was a role model to all spy masters and perverts. The toad Sanin couldn't sense chakra of any sort as he moved deeper into another of Root's hidden facilities. How Sarutobi hadn't noticed all this building. What had his sensei been doing while Hokage? Sleeping. Mourning. An entire army loyal to someone other than Hidden Leaf and the Hokage had been formed up, officially dispelled, and unofficially multiplied like cockroaches. If he survived, if Jiraiya would be having words with his sensei. The toad Sanin arrived at the room where Tsunade was restrained. The ceiling array around the door was impressive. But hardly a nuisance to someone of Jiraiya's experience. 3 minutes later, he cautiously walked inside the room, looking and feeling for more booby traps. Tsunade was still unconscious. The room seemed clear, which made Jiraiya all the more suspicious. Danzo would have known of Jiraiya's skill. Those seals wouldn't have been a challenge for him. But they would have for anyone but Jiraiya. Those seals ensured that the toad Sanin had to come into this room. Brilliant. Always a brilliant deduction, but always a few moments too late. Jiraiya scooped up Tsunade from her chair and prepared to shuncheon away. But he wasn't fast enough. The seal array written on the seat of Tsunade's chair flickered briefly once her weight was removed, and then the entire room was covered in black seals which now revealed themselves. God damn it. Someone painted this room yellow and used a yellow ink to craft the fucking seals. Slippery enough to be one of Orochimaru's little games. I must be slipping. Jiraiya bent down to set Tsunade on the floor to begin removing the seals, a lot of them, when he heard a laugh from the corridor. You're slipping, Hokage-sama. The voice was familiar. But Jiraiya couldn't place it until a form came closer to the blocked entrance. It was Sarutobi Asuma, the Sandaime Hokage's estranged son. He was dressed all in black like an Anbu doing an overnight mission. Asuma had never been in the Anbu, to Jiraiya's knowledge. What the hell? Jounin Asuma, get me and the Lady Tsunade out of here. A shaking head was his answer. That's quite impossible. Any disruption of these seals causes the exploding tags buried in the Hokage monument above us to detonate. Jiraiya felt his guts tighten. He didn't even think to question the veracity of the statement. It made too much sense from a bastard like Danzo. Then why are you here, Asuma? The laid-back Jonin was gone. The zealot, like Danzo, was all that remained. To say goodbye to my predecessor. I will be Hokage after you're dead. XXXXXXXXXXX. Sasori expected to be ambushed any moment. Had been running for 20 minutes when it finally came and he was still surprised. He felt seals triggering as he jumped over a tiny stream. Powerful earth and walls erupted in every direction. A moment or two later, Sasori was trapped in a makeshift arena with high walls and no seating capacity. You promised me a master class, puppeteer of the sand. I would have my lesson. Sasori ran to one of the walls. It was still filled with chakra, somehow. He checked to see if he was under a Jinjutsu but this structure was real. How could his intelligence not have learned these things about the Nine Tails? The money he poured into his spies, the missions to collect the boys' students and extract needed intelligence, all this work for a horribly inaccurate portrayal. Even if the boy had temporarily wrecked the third Kazukiage puppet, Sasori thought it a gimmick, a fluke. But the boy had skills in sealing as in puppetry. Sasori had learned enough sealing to make his human puppets possible but he had not made a general study of the field. That was obviously a mistake. The voice, generalized before like a mimicry technique, now came from directly behind him. Sasori twisted, his puppet's scorpion tail, aiming for where he heard the voice. Had expected to see nothing, but the stinger was impaling a smiling, blonde ninja who wasn't dying. This wasn't a clone, this was a puppet. Or some type of hybrid. This was very bad. The puppet or clone or whatever it was continued talking, even as he was impaled. I was a little child when I learned to control chakra strings, master puppeteer. A few years later, I took a trip to hidden sand hiding out inside a puppet I built and that's when I first heard of you and your terrifying techniques. But, I have to say I am not impressed so far. The puppet dissolved and a bit of stone or metal fell to the ground. Sasori twisted when he felt 3 kunai fly at him. He dodged more adroitly than his bulk would indicate. 3 smiling, blonde clones puppets were now in front of him. They hadn't been there before and it wouldn't be easy to sneak inside this makeshift arena. Unless there was a hidden passage. Was that all this was? A trick. Something to throw Sasori off his game. He pulled out the third Kazukiage once more. Within a moment, the metallic sands had destroyed these 3. Then the 5 who appeared behind Sasori. Then the 7. Sasori got so into his rhythm that he didn't see the attack. He didn't even know how much fire struck his battle puppet and the third Kazukiage. He hadn't seen the fireballs emanate from any source. As he began to feel the heat inside his wood and metal puppet, he decided he had to flee. Many sealing scrolls would be destroyed, many of his human puppets lost. But he had to survive. He could still win. It took me a few moments to prepare those hellfire seals, inspired by one of the more interesting techniques known to the Uchiha. My increasing cascade of clones kept you occupied so you didn't notice. A pity about your metallic sand using puppet, it was quite a technique. I myself have only managed to use elemental wind to move sand around. My efforts in experimenting with magnetism have all failed. That sand ninja was a genius. The professorial dissertation came from everywhere and nowhere. It was unnerving to say the least. The monologue changed. The voice was single again, identifiable. It was behind Sasori, a good deal away. I suppose you know why I have been preparing for this day for 3 years, Scorpion. You took one of my students from me. Sasori needed to reverse this. He needed the 9 tails to make a mistake. He needed an angry, foolish opponent. 1. I have taken 2. As soon as I can find the other one, he will die as well. The 9 tails is too important to be allowed companions and allies, not when I can milk them for intelligence. The blonde ninja no longer smiled. I thank you for the notification, however cruel your intention for telling me. I had been trying to find him for some time. Now, let me show you what a true puppet master can do. The speaker disappeared. And 8 red blurs erupted from the ground and swung with kunai. Sasori avoided 3 of the strikes. The others hit non-lethal areas. Sasori leapt as those clones or blurs disappeared. It was like they knew precisely where he would be. Did the 9 tail have a precognitive ability? When he landed he didn't even have a second before more red blurs erupted and swung. Sasori's wooden arm, his right one, hit the earth. Sasori jumped as soon as he could, but when he landed a deep nick in his leg fractured upon his landing. Sasori tumbled to the ground. Another blur of red figures erupted from the ground. Sasori lost his remaining arm and leg. He was now a self-made puppet without means to move. You survived that better than Kisame did, Sasori. That was my masterwork, the flowing red death, made from my puppet clones by means of seals. With these weapons I can never really be disarmed, unlike you. Your human puppets went up in smoke. It's for the best that your type of abomination is ended. Sasori knew it was over. Kill me, then. Kill me. End this. I have questions first, Akasuna no Sasori. Why antagonize me, kill my students, taunt me, did you so little value your life? It was a good question. I did not think anyone this powerful. Arrogance, then. More great ninja fall to their own arrogance than to any other cause. That put a bit of fire back into Sasori. I am bested, but I am not the strongest of my organization. You will not be able to beat them. Why did you follow Akatsuki? This is my final question. I have not been able to understand why someone as powerful as yourself would abandon a village, but then join up with a bunch of other criminals. You didn't need protection from the hunters. I'd suspect many of your human puppets are the bodies of Oinen. Well, why? Sasori's puppet face cold move very well. The final bits of humanity were starting to fail. However, this was a question he wanted to answer. I will tell you if you promise to aid me. It is a minor favor, only a slight bending of your rather pedestrian moral code. I have no need to find out this answer then. The blonde ninja, was this one the real one? Drew a sword from his back. Hold up. I have something to say. Each of the original 10 contracted with Akatsuki to a set of goals in exchange for a single favor to be repaid later by the Akatsuki at large. Kisame wished for the water daimyo to be slaughtered. I sold my services for the right to end the existence of the Hada clan, the monsters who killed my parents. Sasori hated to document his own weakness in his younger years, but it was the truth. You weren't strong enough to do this on your own. When I joined, no. I could not have infiltrated the largest of the hidden villages and struck down one particular Anbu. I killed the third Kazukiage with poison during a scheduled meeting. It isn't a story I've told often, not very impressive. An S rank does not mean we're gods. But, in the intervening years, I have become powerful enough with the help of the Akatsuki. Too bad the contract is enforced by our rings. Betrayal is death, not that any, but our leader know this. Orochimaru betrayed you and it didn't kill him. He stayed with us until he knew his immortality technique would work and then he went his own way. The ring, it destroyed his original body. I did not know that. My spy didn't seem to, either. Sasori laughed, bitterly. So much of the world consumed with spying and no one knows anything. Will you do this for me, a favor granted by the strong to the weak? Will you kill the Hada clan of Konoha? The blonde ninja looked disgusted, but then shrugged. You deserve nothing, but I am not a cruel person. Hada Kakashi, the last of that clan, was killed less than a week ago in the aftermath of a failed assassination attempt against a Hokage. Thank you. I wish I could have killed you, but I die happy with that knowledge. The world dimmed as Sasori's will to survive diminished. With his failing sight, he saw a sword penetrate the sealed container holding his human heart. XXXXXXXXXX. You of all people threw in with Danzo? Jiraiya asked the sole remaining son of the third Hokage. My father's peacenic actions have stripped us of the power we should have, Jiraiya. Had we followed the path of war, the great 5 shinobi powers would be only 2 or 1 now. We could have destroyed Kumo all those years ago when they mucked around with the Hyuga. Hidden Mist had been weakened by their continuous civil strife and would have been an easy target. The 4th Hokage brought Iwa to its knees and then stopped. He and my father negotiated a peace treaty when we should have annexed them. And Suna, our traitorous partner. After their betrayal, we could have ended them. But we did not. We did nothing. You will destroy the Hidden Leaf. You are not the village. You are a weak fool. Your student, the Namikaze, would have been a powerful foe, but he was too self-sacrificing to do the truly hard things. No, I and my allies will restore Hidden Leaf to the greatness we had under the Nidaime. We were born of war and will return to it. None of this made any sense. How? How did you become this warped? I have always felt this way, ever since I studied the shinobi wars in the academy. When I fought with my dad about these things, I learned to be less public in my views, but I found compatriots. Even my time in the Fire Guard was mostly spent training the root with a shadow clone refreshed every day or two, dealing with the ceremonial bodyguard duties now we're ready. You're a breathing dead man, my father I can deal with after your funeral. Danzo and your compatriots in the village are all neutralized. Asuma shrugged. He looked like he didn't actually care. Danzo was too shrill, too obvious. And I can always find new compatriots, the root methods do work wonders. You are a monster, Jounin Asuma. I am a true ninja, you worthless bastard. The seemingly lazy ninja, relaxed to a fault normally, began to shrink back in the shadows. He had an image to maintain, to grow and twist into the leadership of the village. As soon as Asuma was at a safe distance, Jiraiya knew the mountain would fall and detonated remotely, somehow leaving Asuma a logical, safe choice to become a Hokage. He wasn't the strongest Jounin in the village, not by a long shot, but the old lie about the Hokage being the strongest ninja wasn't the actual truth. The Hokage was a strong ninja, but in Hidden Leaf, there were other unofficial qualifications. The Hokage was always connected somehow to a previous Hokage. The first was brother to the second. Both were sensei to the third. The third student became the fifth, and Jiraiya's student had been the fourth. It was like an odd type of dynastic lineage and it wouldn't be disrupted by Jiraiya's death. The son of a Hokage would qualify as part of this careful extended dynasty. If Jiraiya did nothing, he would die. If he did something, he would die. But he could disrupt the seals and bring down the mountain early. Jiraiya had always mourned and envied his student, Namikaze Minato, for his self-sacrifice. For saving the village from a monster. I apologize, Tsunadeheim, Jiraiya whispered. I cannot protect you this time. The great pervert's last words, Asuma's mocking voice carried back. Now just die. Jiraiya stood up, formed a brilliant Rasengan in his hand, and pushed his hand into one of the seals. The exploding seals above did their jobs. Asuma barely heard the explosions before he realized what had happened. He tried to shunchen away but the rocks crushed him long before he finished the first hand seal. In the Hokage tower, Sarutobi was on his feet the moment he felt the explosion. The normally illuminated faces of the first and second disappeared. Half of Sarutobi's own image slid off the mountain, crushing the businesses and houses underneath. Although he wouldn't discover it until nearly sunset the next day, Sarutobi Hiruzen had become, for the third time in his life, the presiding Hokage in Hidden Leaf. All of his students were dead. All of his children were dead. He wouldn't have any time to mourn. The quarter of his village was in ruins. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto, the real Naruto, stepped out from the cavern head used as a temporary base. As he gathered his belongings, he felt a wisp of a particularly memorable and vile chakra. Madara. Uchiha Madara was nearby. Had been the one to set up Sasori as bait. Naruto sealed away his belongings, brought out another sealing scroll, and then set off. He was ready for Madara. You can come out now, Madara. I know you are lurking about. The orange masked Muppet did appear then. Your earthwall technique was impressive and annoying. I could not see what you did to Sasori. It is good I deal with you today before you become too powerful. Your body will survive even after your brain is dead. For a few days, at least, until I can get that demon out of you. Naruto gave no visible reaction to this fearsome-sounding threat. No, he continued on with his semi-absent meandering thoughts. I wasn't sure if it would be you or the other one, Pain. Both of you have interesting techniques for traveling long distances in a brief time span. But I'm glad it was you. How are your lungs, by the way? Madara said nothing, but went on the offensive. His lungs, apparently, had been quite bothersome. Naruto ducked the blast of black flame and danced out of the way, as if he were one of his graceful puppets. A nice greeting but I have to ask for parley. My master. What foolish prattle is this? Madara grunted. My master would speak with you. Now. Without a hand seal, Naruto disappeared and then Uchiha Itachi came out of the cavern that Naruto had just vacated. Madara, you look unchanged. What, Itachi? I was sure you were dead. I saw Kisam's head but I thought yours was kept for experimentation. Itachi looked even more impassive than usual. You think the Nine-Tail could do the things Hess reputed to have done? I have had the Biju under my control no thanks to your lack of instruction for nearly 6 years. I found a bedraggled orphan dying of hunger in a slum of Grass Country's capital. You remember that mission? I was long delayed from returning, right? That was when I found the Nine-Tail and made him mine. You never told me. Traitor. Madara was shouting now, angry beyond measure. I killed Kisame in order to leave Akatsuki without seeming a traitor. The ring did nothing to me, of course, as I unraveled and defeated its secret protections. Madara was so far beyond enraged that he couldn't form a word for a few moments. I could have ended this farce of the Akatsuki long ago. I just needed the Nine-Tail to make my final plan succeed. Konoha could have burned 6 years ago. Itachi cracked a sliver of a smile. I know. Itachi, my student, today I end your life and reclaim the Nine-Tails. You may try. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto prepared for phase 2 of the battle. Madara was certainly unhinged. Fitting a voice synthesizer, like his tarot puppets had used under Itachi's robes, had taken a few minutes and was worth more than an army of ninja right. It had been worth the extra hours to return to Itachi's prison and collect him, exploding seals and all, just in case it was Madara stalking him. He had even fitted in glass eyeballs into Itachi's eye sockets. It all looked real. Save that Itachi couldn't use his non-existent Sharingan and couldn't attack. But Madara didn't even know which direction was up. So few ninja use deception to the full. A pity. Itachi's cloaked body wasn't a puppet, just an unwilling human with his spinal cord suppressed. Naruto moved Itachi's body, not Itachi. This is a technique that Sasori would have sniffed out in a second, but it was likely Madara didn't even know it was possible. It was a fine deception. Itachi weaved and bobbed, ducking Madara's increasingly angered and frenzied attacks. He knew better than to engage in a Tsukiyomi war with his ex-protege, as Itachi was perhaps just a sliver more talented with that technique. Phase 2 began as small vials hidden in Itachi's cloak had their corks pulled by chakra strings. They began to leak. The liquid gases began to react to the air. The environment filled with small concentrations of an odorless gas. It was a poison, but not the kind that killed. The kind that blinded. Itachi led Madara on a chase, walking Madara right through plume after plume of the nasty creation. From many hours of discussing Madara, Naruto understood that the man's deprivations had likely made him immortal in some fashion because of his special form of Sharingan eyes. Eyes which Naruto was now trying to actively destroy. This poison wasn't the slow-acting optic nerve poison that Kabuto had designed all those years ago. This was a derivative, a much more caustic chemical. Naruto slowed down Itachi movements, allowing Itachi's body to be wounded by a massive fireball. Itachi screamed and fell to the ground. As predicted, Madara had to stretch out this act, make it symbolic. He knelt down next to Itachi's body and then he began to tighten his hands around Itachi's neck. Not a ninja killing a ninja. A stab with a kunai through the throat, a slash of a katana, some quick and efficient. This was a mentor taking the time and effort to personally, slowly kill the only thing he loved, at any level. It was a personal thing, a crime of passion and hatred. To do such a thing, Madara could not use his time-space jutsu. His ghostly hands would do nothing to Itachi if he had his ultimate defense active. In his sublime anger, he had forgotten the Nine Tails was nearby. He had lowered his defenses and bared his neck for anyone to attack in his moments of distraction. Perfect. XXXXXXXXXX. Madara looked into Itachi's eyes as he strangled his former student. Thus always to traitors. Itachi's struggles became more vigorous but ineffective, while his eyes seemed grateful. What was going on? He tried to remove a hand to interrogate Itachi, then it happened. Madara's body went slack. He tried to flee. He tried to leap a few kilometers away, as he normally could with ease. But nothing responded. Even his chakra seemed to ignore what his mind was screaming out. It was like his body was dead, while only his mind was still functioning. He tried to use an eye technique, tried to use his spirit guardian Susanoo to protect him from whatever was happening, but, in the attempt, his eye exploded outward. Madara's screams could be heard for a kilometer. For just a second. Somehow the brain's impulses had overwhelmed a chakra string, but just for a second. Pained, anguished screams. Genuine screams of terror and frustration and helplessness. Like the screams of a village in the face of a nearly immortal Kyuubi no Kitsune. A fitting, well-deserved scream. But Naruto sent out a puppet clone as Madara wasn't stupid enough to damage his other eye, unless it was an attempted vengeance for a betrayal. He was still of two minds about how to do this. If Itachi had been right, then the type of eternal Mangekyo Sharingan Madara had would keep him alive, even if he experienced a normally fatal injury. So was it possible to permanently hobble him? Would that keep the regeneration from happening? Or should Naruto attempt to destroy Madara's body? No. A disabled Madara was almost as good as a dead Madara. After all, Madara had minutes earlier threatened to leave Naruto brain dead so that he could extract the nine-tailed demon at his leisure. It was a fitting plan, even Madara unwittingly agreed. Wounded, trapped, unable to move, a safer option, for now, than killing Madara outright. Naruto didn't want to have to keep tracking him down and using gimmicks to get the ridiculously strong ninja to make himself vulnerable. The puppet clone bent down and selected a rock. A few blasts of elemental air chakra had the stone quite sharp. The weapon incapacitating Madara would not be a chakra weapon. That was more likely to be detected by his body as an attack. No, this rock knife would have the honors. The puppet clone used his free hand to pull the orange mask off the smallish ninja. He didn't even care to see what Madara looked like. He just wanted a clear shot at the man's neck. The chakra strings squeezing off Madara's spinal cord were about to be physically aided, the effect made mostly permanent. The puppet clone brought the stone knife down between Madara's first and second cervical vertebrae, slightly off of center. He loosed the hold his chakra strings had on Madara's spinal column, and the knife was performing much of the same task. Madara's heart continued to beat, his lungs to inflate. His body was alive, his mind was alive, but his body's ability to follow Madara's commands that seemed gone for the time being. Enough of the spinal column was destroyed to keep him trapped in his mind, but not too much to allow him to die. The puppet clone gently pushed Madara forward onto his stomach so as not to interfere with the stone knife which was still embedded in the spinal bone and severing a good portion of the ninja's nerve transmitters. But the knife blocking things, regeneration of the nerves couldn't take place. Electricity didn't pass well through rock and nerves weren't strong enough to burrow through it. The puppet clone stood watch over the still immobilized Itachi and the incapacitated Madara. An hour passed, then Naruto himself appeared, reasonably confident that Madara wasn't playing possum. But the kind of pain he was in from a burst eyeball, his body would be shaking or head be screaming at the least if he could. Naruto had used the time to fetch some super glue from the nearest village. He used the nasty stuff to seal the slight opening between the stone and skin. Then he ripped the leather thongs from Madara's strange orange mask and used them to help stabilize the stone knife in Madara's spine. Naruto had feared this ninja for years. It was only a vicious deception that permitted Naruto to win this time. He wasn't about to let some stupid accident free him to start regenerating somehow. That stone knife wasn't coming out. The cordon of 6 cage buncheons lifted Madara off the ground and onto their shoulders. 6 should ensure smooth movement so as not to jostle the knife too much. Naruto then returned Itachi to a ceiling scroll. Head deal with a once talented ninja later now that he had finally served a useful purpose. The procession began. Naruto would be returning to near the Namikaze estate in River Country with his prize. He'd find an appropriate place to keep Madara safe. He wanted to crow and celebrate at this stroke of luck at this victory. But he knew better. There was still pain. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto was in Rain Country trying to figure out where Pain's main base was located. Ever since Head secured Madara in one of his River Country bases, Head been searching for Pain. In the ever-gloomy rain, Naruto had made no progress. Head surveyed the villages and towns quickly, already guessing that was too obvious. Then Head begun trying to find useful caverns, even those masked with ninjutsu, in the surrounding hills. There were many such caverns, some with interesting spoils, which Naruto gladly stuffed into storage scrolls, but there was no Pain. He stalked up a hill and used a technique Head developed to deal with Orochimaru's hidden bases. The sound waves traveling through the ground and up the hill ahead of him would collapse any holes they found. Holes, such as well-hidden caves. Thus, a few hours later, a rather irate Pain, his principal body covered in wet dust and rock shards, and a woman with an odd sort of flower in her hair Konan, if Itachi was to be believed, finally met Uzumaki Naruto, the host of the Nine Tails. Pain did not immediately attack. Naruto prepared his flowing red death technique. Konan looked over the young ninja with an undisguised amount of curiosity. "I expected you to be dead, little ninja," she said. "Why? Our true leader went mad and has been stalking you for weeks, almost a month. You must be some kind of genius to have avoided him for so long." Naruto the real one laughed. He performed a Sealess Cage Buncheon and prepared to replace himself with a shadow clone. Pain spoke before Naruto left. "He did find you, didn't he?" Naruto paused in his preparations. "He did. He claimed to be truly immortal. Not the false immortality offered by a religion or by body part salvaging or body snatching. Did he lie?" "I have no idea," Naruto said. He was about to depart and let the battle happen when he felt something very odd. He felt chakra sent off in bursts and returning just the same way. Then he saw Pain perform a summoning and 5 more bodies, ninja bodies, appeared. Now, to Naruto's sensitive chakra detection abilities honed through his mastery of chakra strings and cables, the air was positively filled with tiny bursts of chakra, an almost continual amount, filling the air. Now that he was aware of it, it seemed very odd. He had never been this close to Pain before, definitely not at the waterfall debacle. Madara had set to chasing Naruto before Pain got within a kilometer of the Jinchuriki. What was this? This air filled with little chakra packets. It felt like a young Suna puppeteer almost stuttering with his fingers as he or she tried to become proficient and failing in handling a puppet. The puppet. Pain and his bodies. The signals back and forth from home base, controlling these bodies. Yes, that was a discovery. Naruto had the flowing red death ready, he was ready to replace himself with a shadow clone, but instead he stayed. This was too interesting now to leave. Pain was interesting. Conan restarted the stalled conversation. "I personally looked for a long time for a method to deal with the mad little man. How did you do it?" Such a simple question, but Naruto felt a lot calmer all of a sudden. These godlike people had forgotten simple things. A powerful ninja body was still a body, still required air and signals from the brain. They spent too much time thinking big and overwhelming. No one was better at big and overwhelming than Madara was reputed to be. Hence this conscious anxiety. No, Naruto's early experiments and focus on the small, on micro puppets, on the details that matter, all that still served him well. Naruto realized that Pain and Conan were powerful, but they were different types of ninja. They didn't think the same way he did. And he could win today because of it. Pain the puppeteer was dead without chakra, without his signal flooding the area. There was a way to cut his strings. Unfortunately, to use a wide area chakra nullifying seal would mean Naruto couldn't use a puppet or even a cage buncheon nearby these Pain bodies and Conan. It would make defense easier, but offense nearly impossible. The opportunity was still worth it. Naruto used a dozen chakra strings to begin etching the seals into the bark of a nearby tree. When he activated it, he would be without his best weapons, his flowing red death would be impossible to perform, but his opponents would be at least as handicapped. Conan could be poisoned with as many poisons as Naruto carried around on him, and his time in grass country left him an avid poisoner, and Pain's bodies, without instruction from the home base, would flop to the ground, as useless as dead fish. Naruto relaxed a bit and answered Conan's question, filling the pregnant silence. Even the local insects had gone quiet in the face of so much chakra used in the summoning. To be honest, I stabbed him with a knife into his neck. I did not kill, but rather disabled. I have no idea if Hess is immortal as you claim, as Hess now defeated and held prisoner unable to move or speak. Pain or one of his bodies, the one who had summoned the others frowned. He is impervious to physical attack. Be honest. I am. I offered Madara something of great value. When he wrapped his hands around it forgetting about me I struck. Conan nodded. Yes, he can be wholly impervious or solid like a normal ninja, not a mixture to the two at the same time. To touch something with his hands he would have to leave himself vulnerable. A simple, elegant solution. What was this object of value? Naruto didn't understand why these 7 ninjas weren't attacking. Why were they stalling? Reinforcements. There were a few Akatsuki still alive. But Kakuzu wasn't on Pain's level and Zetsu was a disgusting creation. A deception. A deception he bought with his whole being. The seeming leader of the Pain bodies frowned. Madara was an ancient being with a powerful Dijutsu. He would have seen through any deception. Naruto's preparations of the chakra nullifier were ready. He had mentally counted up his poisons. He needed to time this just right before whatever plot they were working on happened. No pain. I believe him. That stopped Naruto for a moment. Why was Conan saying that? Naruto had told but half or a quarter of the truth. You and Madara both overvalued his experience and his Sharingan. He was powerful in his prime, but he was increasingly mentally unstable. If this young ninja did something that resonated in tune with Madara's madness it could very well have worked. Perhaps, the lead pain body said. Boy, I will offer this. Neutrality between us. What? I offer neutrality. I will not hunt you. Nor will the Akatsuki any longer. You have dealt with Madara so we need no longer bother with his ridiculous plan to capture the Biju. The only problem I see is that Sasori remains highly interested in you for his own reasons. Sasori is no longer a problem. I dealt with him. Now you tell me why you would declare neutrality. Conan looked shocked. To her it was one thing to trick a deranged Madara but to deal with Sasori, a suspicious bastard on his best days, that was something else. Conan apparently undervalued Madara as a ninja. Pain looked unsurprised at Naruto's statement. Instead he answered in a calm, level tone, you have cost us too much of our capacity to keep this war going. I don't know how many Akatsuki you have truly dealt with but I know we're well below half of our needed senior membership. Our drive to enforce peace around the world had gotten distracted by this quest for the Biju. Because of Madara. I have no problem ending the side quest in order to fulfill our main goal. You would kill for peace? Naruto asked. The only path to peace is through searing pain, the lead pain body asserted. If you believe that, then watch. In the coming years, I will prove a different method. Conan looked like she wanted to argue about such a bold statement but Pain's main body cocked his head and said, it is possible you might do just that. Let me make a promise, then, Naruto said, improvising. If I ever see you or Conan again, I will assume you have betrayed our neutrality. I know your secrets, Pain. I figured them out after you summoned your other bodies. With that statement, Naruto powered on the chakra neutralizing seal. Naruto would only realize later that the storage scrolls holding his food and tent had been destroyed by the neutralizing seal. After that, they were little better than fancy paper someone had already scrawled on. Pain's bodies dropped to the ground like puppets with cut strings, which was exactly what they were. Unfortunately, Naruto's false legs was also attached to him with chakra strings. And his leg fell out underneath him. His physical training gave him good enough balance that he didn't fall down, but it was awkward for a brief moment. Naruto turned to a doubly shocked looking Conan. Didn't know a cripple could be a ninja, huh? Well, some of us can. Even missing a leg, I can take you, all of you. Now, tell your leader when you manage to resuscitate him, keep Kakuzu and Zetsu on short leashes. I know how to destroy both of them, he said, bluffing, and I have more than one good idea of how to deal with you, too. I will try, Conan said, her eyes swiveling between Naruto's false leg and the 6 motionless bodies of Pain. Zetsu is difficult though, when he becomes fixated. If Pain gets any ideas regarding my show of power today remind him. I had once thought to use an optic nerve poison on him. It worked on Uchiha Sasuke, from what I understand, and another variant did some interesting things to Uchiha Madara. But, on him it won't have worked, would it? Destroying the eyes of these bodies would have been, at best, a temporary victory. No, I understand how to deal with him. And I can and will do it again, if I see him again. Naruto turned his, spotted a likely tree branch, hopped 3 times, and ripped himself a temporary crutch. He turned and began hobbling his way down the hill. He wasn't sure how far the nullification stretched, but he'd rig up a new temporary leg as soon as he could. Had left the old one behind, for it was too difficult to balance on one leg and bend down to pick it up. He also didn't plan to show Conan any more of his shame, of his weakness. How? Conan called out. She needed to know how to fix this, how to repair her best friend's bodies. She obviously hadn't yet figured out she needed to drag the bodies away from a sealing array she couldn't see or to wait for the seal to exhaust its power. Never screw with a sealing master on ground. Hess had time to prepare. He didn't know if the wind would carry his words. He didn't care. She won't understand. As it was, Naruto wasn't sure he understood why he did all that. As he left, he asked himself a question. Why? Why leave them alone? Why accept this neutrality? He knew they were likely to betray him in the future, but he was honestly interested to see if Pain's methods would work in the slightest. Peace through war or failure every time it had been tried. The burning of a forest could provide vibrant new growth a few years after the devastation, but people were different from trees and plants. People remembered, they held grudges. Of all people, Naruto understood this. A grudge against the fox had led to a horrible childhood for him. His background had left Naruto thinking about peace for a long time, and he had developed a plan. Something to do now that the legend of Taro had faded, now that Naruto no longer needed to prove his strength as a ninja. Naruto, a cripple with a missing leg, was as strong as they got. Ninjutsu for ninjutsu, he would lose. In taijutsu, he would lose to a master, but in an unrestricted fight, Naruto could figure out a way to triumph. He wanted to see if his idea would work, if it would work better than Pain's. It was all curiosity. Powerful ninja had very little to entertain them once they reached the summit. Something interesting, something curious shouldn't be sacrificed until it bored the mind. That was why Naruto hadn't immediately killed Sasori 3 weeks ago. Had wanted to exhaust all the knowledge, all the promise Sasori had. All the amusement. As the rain stopped and would remain stopped for nearly a month, Naruto realized to his mounting horror that he was just as crazy as these other S-ranked bastards. He found his chakra working again, hinged a cage bunshin into the shape of his prosthetic, and resumed a more graceful walk off the hill. His mind returned to the idea of insanity. Toying with people, killing them in ways that amused him. Had left Pain alive so that there was the promise of something interesting, something challenging in the future. The Grass Jounin Council had been right to expel him as Taro of the River all those years ago. Naruto shivered, not from the chill air, and set out back to river country. Had try not to think of this again. Aster, my precious grandson. The daylight is a-wasting. Stop trying to play the dotty old ninja master. I know you better than that. The old man bashed the top of his grandson's head with his long-stemmed pipe. After all, the young grandson had his grandfather perched on his back and he was running at full pace through the western side of Fire Country. It was surprisingly comfortable for the grandfather and excellent training for a young ninja. Why are we going to river country again? I was perfectly happy in wave country, you know. I have heard the most interesting rumors, the grandfather said. I think I liked you better when you were uptight all the time, grandfather. Enough talking, run faster, little ninja. The dialogue ended. The only noises as the sunset were heavy inhalation of air and the rhythmic pounding of sandaled feet in the now thick grasses of the border between river and Fire Country. The sun set long before the young ninja, carrying the weight of 2 people, plus belongings, arrived at the massive almost undulating walls of river country's capital city, the Living City. The ninja guardians took the grandfather and grandson's name, confirmed they were permitted inside the city after sunrise the next day, no visitors remained inside the city overnight, and then called ahead for a hotel room for the night. The old man, after all, was just a bit famous all over the elemental nations. The old man and his grandson found their hotel, located outside the city walls on the eastern edge. They slept easily and made it back to the gates by 8. In the daylight, when the guards actually permitted people to enter the Living City, rather than just clearing them to access the hotels, the questions were a bit more in-depth. Both of you are listed as ninja in our roles, is that correct? The old man nodded. What is your business with the Living City? The questioner looked to be young, 16 at best, several years younger than the old man's grandson. I wish for my grandson to continue his ninja training at the River Center. What country do you both currently reside in? Wave Country, the grandson said. The guard just nodded. He didn't need to mention that only countries that had accepted river country protection could send ninjas for training at the River Center. These ninja obviously knew. Here are your passes, the guard said, handing over small metal discs. The Living City is a bit different to navigate around. This map should help. The River Center is in the far north. Many people also like to visit the daimyo's garden. The grandfather smiled and interrupted. Yes, I understand the daimyo is often found in his garden rather than in a formal court setting. Honored sir, there is no court. The daimyo's private residence is directly under the garden, as most residences are constructed underground. The grandson seemed surprised at that. It seemed odd to him. But he had his own agenda. I had heard about your merchant district. Yes, it is here, the guard said, pointing to a section of the map labeled the Grand Concourse. This is the only part of the city where commercial buildings are permitted above ground. There are many other commercial areas, though, in underground concourses. Why build underground? The grandson asked. I think you will understand after you enter the city. With that, the guard bid both ninja best luck. The grandfather, with his exceptional hearing undiminished, heard a comment as he left. Call the daimyo's office. Pass along the names of these guests. XXXXXXXXXXX. It hadn't been easy to get to the river center. First, the view was distracting. Everything inside the living city was green. Instead of buildings everywhere parted only by roads, the living village seemed like a massive growing vegetable field dotted with buildings, roads, rivers, and people. Did you know it was like this, grandfather? No Konohamaru. I had no idea. Second, the city wasn't laid out on a grid. Indeed, the roads seemed to run in a very irregular manner. Some followed the rivers that ran through the city. Others were ovals or circles around special park areas or groves of fruit trees. Third, the grand concourse, which was smack dab in the middle of the path Konohamaru had plotted, was very tempting. The smells from the food stands were mouth-watering, the stores stocked unusual goods that weren't found at all in Wave Country. One bookseller had a complete stock of the works of Jiraiya in their memorial editions. By 10 o'clock, grandson and grandfather arrived at the river center. It was the largest above-ground structure in the living city. The kunoichi looked up and smiled when the grandson walked into a small, but airy reception area. Most of the students here moved with purpose, even the very youngest. For such a serious place, it didn't seem dour. There were too many blooming flowers growing on and up the walls. Ah, yes, Saratobi Konohamaru, the daimyo's office informed us of your intent to register with us. Please come with me. Kind sir, the woman said, looking at the former leader of the Hidden Leaf Village, I was told that the schoolmaster wished to meet and speak with you. Who is the schoolmaster? Saratobi Hiruzen asked. He runs the river center and is the commanding general of the river army. 2 vital tasks for one man. Yes, a loud voice said, as a tall powerful man walked into the room. The grandfather recognized that this was likely the schoolmaster. They are the same task. A general must build an exceptional army before he can be trusted to command one. That is my nindo. Saratobi smiled. I would be glad to speak with you. Call me Namikaze-san. The third Namikaze. Let's just say it's a name in honor of my past. Walk with me. The tall powerful man walked quickly out of the reception area on the lowest floor of the river center and began to walk up the gradual incline leading to the third and highest floor. Are you perchance related to the Namikaze who settled in Hidden Leaf so many years ago? It is possible, the schoolmaster said, but unlikely. I carry the name for my brother in arms, the daimyo. Namikaze Naruto. Yes. For an old ninja, the one known as the unluckiest ninja ever, you remain sharp-witted. I would very much like to speak with him. And he would like to speak with you. He will be hearing formal petitions in the daimyo's garden, where he sits as a judge of last recourse, for the next hour. Would you care to talk with me until then? I have many questions you might be able to answer. Saratobi smiled. Of course. What do you wish to know? XXXXXXXXXX. And what will happen to my grandson? The far-reaching conversation between the schoolmaster once known as Number 3 and Saratobi Hiruzen was winding down. The pair had just walked into visual range of the daimyo's garden. I have not seen the results of his testing, but I expect You've trained him well in the ninja arts. I'd suspect we will give him 1 year of classroom time, mainly to pick up the non-military subjects we teach, along with continuing his physical education and toning. Then a 5-year tour as a genin, that's broken up into 6 months tours with Jounin-led teams or one-on-one mentorships. Everyone experiences police duty in one of the protectorates of River Country, everyone also serves 1 or 2 stints on border patrol. The rest of the time is spent examining possible tracks. More time with the police or service with the diplomatic corps as a rookie. So when would he begin taking on missions? The schoolmaster looked confused for a moment. Ah, I see what you're asking. When would he serve a client? Yes, precisely. The schoolmaster shook his head. Never. Saratobi's brow creased. Think of our ninja more like your Anbu. Our ninja all serve the daimyo. We have abolished mercenary missions. We do not aid criminals who might contract for an assassination, and any resident may go to a police station and request ninja assistance without paying an extra fee beyond the taxes paid to support the police. We take care of yakuza and other criminals as soon as learn of them. All of this makes countries like Earth and Lightning more than a bit angry with us. That made little sense to the former Hokage. You fund all this just through taxes. It's enough to keep your army fed and paid, correct? In Earth Country, for example, people pay taxes to fund an army and a police force, and an intelligence and counter-espionage center and a team of diplomats, and to pay for hospitals and doctors here, in River and in our protectorates, some of the tax money funds ninja who do all of these things. But how can a small team of ninja defend against a large samurai army? Through appropriate training, of course. When genin graduate into Chunin, they return to River Center for an additional year. We call it War College. Those who go into combat operations as their specialty learn how to deal with large armies of samurai and ninja, how to plan and execute ambushes, how to lay siege and succeed or, even better, how to avoid the siege in the first place using stealth. Other Chunin specialize in diplomacy and politics, all are diplomats or active ninja, or policing and justice, all judges throughout the protectorate are active ninja, medicine or education are one of another dozen fields. Your grandson, when he becomes a Chunin, will also be expected to devote at least a year to teaching at the river center, even if he does not choose to specialize in education. Sarutobi just nodded. They had stopped at the edge of the daimyo's garden. It was the largest open space Sarutobi had ever seen within a village's walls of any village or city had ever visited. But he noticed something odd. Those trees, they move. The schoolmaster just laughed. Yes, they do. If you ask nicely, the daimyo might tell you about his dancing trees. Sarutobi's eyes were locked on the dancing trees. 100 or more of them weaved and bobbed and danced in the outer portions of the daimyo's garden. Now Sarutobi understood why the gate guard had explained how to get here. It was a marvel. Technology maybe. That was more Konohama's area of interest. Or perhaps it was Naruto's skill as a puppeteer. He must remember to ask. The large gathering around the center pavilion began to break up. This session of court seemed to be over. Sarutobi began to walk onto the garden, but the schoolmaster held him back. Just wait. He knows you're here, he'll come and find us. No one sets foot in the daimyo's garden without his blessing. Even the petitioners were personally escorted up to the pavilion by the daimyo. What happens to those who try? Let's just say that those trees can do more than dance. Not even you can approach your brother in arms. I can, but not with a guest. It's a security precaution. Someone might attempt to coerce me into granting them access to the daimyo for an assassination attempt. Such things have happened in other countries. You're obviously a powerful ninja even if I've never heard of you before. The schoolmaster laughed. So far no river-trained ninja has ever appeared by name in one of those ridiculous bingo books. A few have gotten photographed and tagged with nicknames but were trained in discretion. So how could you be coerced? Rule number 27. Always possess an accurate understanding of your strengths and weaknesses. Overconfidence kills more often than bad luck. I know that there is at least one person stronger than I am. Sarutobi puzzled it over before he remembered a genin team from Grass, the team Naruto was involved with. From the murkier reaches of his memory, he put it all together. Your sensei. Your daimyo. Precisely. Fewer than 5 living people know that he is a most accomplished ninja. He remains in top form with his puppets and can do things by himself that I might not be able to accomplish with a small army. Sarutobi was confused. How? How did he remain so unknown? It was his will. He has never been given to bragging or boasting. His skills are his own and he had always operated in the darkness. Indeed, this was only possible given his unique form of self-taught education. His name, thanks to your kindness, appears in no academy register, not under his original name or the name he deserves and is now called. Sarutobi understood the advantage and felt a bit pale at his role in making this possible. Our civilian, non-military trained daimyo appears an easy target to those who might oppose us. What can a civilian do against a trained ninja assassin? Enemy assassins make it into the garden from time to time, from those still mercenary hidden villages, but none ever return. Sarutobi stuffed down all his regrets for what had happened and what he had done. The hidden leaf was gone as an idea and as a military power. His mistakes had helped make that possible. How will my grandson become a jounin here? Sarutobi asked. A new topic was safer than silence. Perseverance, as anywhere else, the schoolmaster said. Jounin are promoted based on the ninja's skill level and the need for additional senior ninja in the chosen field. Combat operations, the backbone of our military defensive network, promotes a lot. The medical corps promotes quite a few, the research corps promotes relatively few. Someone going into research or education will remain a Chunin for a long time, but they have relatively safer lives. It all balances in a twisted way. Well, Konohamaru will almost certainly be interested in combat. Perhaps. My oldest boy swears he will be a great steam user, like me, but I suspect the silver-tongued devil will wind up in the diplomatic corps. Your grandson might change his mind after he spends time in a number of different postings. Yes. Now, all of this sounds good for a peacetime setting. What happens during war? All the specialties are important. But we have plans, in wartime, to do some adjusting. Active duty diplomats, for example, will be recalled and given a month or 2 to get back into top physical condition. Their billets will be filled by the wounded and the retired or will go unfilled for a time. Ninjas during difficult periods can stretch and make do with shadow clones for assistance. The same retraining period and reassignment applies to teachers and several other specialties. Researchers for the most part get left alone, even during wartime. All our active duty ninja must keep in good condition, but good condition is not the same as wartime fighting condition. Hopefully our first war will not come for some time. I will hope for that as well. It was a naive hope, of course. Ninja were designed for war, for intrigue, for conflict. Now, how do you ensure a balance of skills? Konohama's taijutsu is quite good and I admit to having taught him more ninjutsu than I probably should have. I broke his heart after all, had been a genin for only 7 months when I disbanded the Hidden Leaf Ninja Force. I indulged him a bit too much, I suppose. He also has access to the monkey summoning contract, but has never taken up Bujutsu. That and many of his other skills I have not been able to hone. The schoolmaster had nodded through the question. As my sensei taught me, we attempt to teach those who follow in our footsteps with the same methods. Each ninja is exposed to a wide variety of styles and techniques. Once something sticks, the people involved in teaching that ninja help him or her to refine the style. I was taught by a puppeteer who mastered a wide range of skills in order to practice his art and he helped me to develop jutsu he would likely never use. Our jounin become experienced in technique development as a necessity. We have a comprehensive technique library of things we've developed and those we've stolen from others, but most ninja will end up discarding off-the-shelf techniques within a few years. They will have to make their own. Very sensible, Sarutobi said. Ninja are far more formidable when the enemy can't predict what they might do. I am glad you approve, said an unfamiliar voice. Sarutobi turned his head and looked toward the voice and saw a not very tall man, with wild blonde hair, dressed in heavy green and bronze ceremonial robes. It was Naruto the daimyo. Considering you famously said, when asked to serve as Hokage for a 4th time, I will fight no more forever, I did not expect to hear this type of admiration for military training. Old man. Naruto. Yes, that's right. I made some money and bought some land. Then some fool decided I owned enough land to be a minor lord and when the last river lord died, I was elected to hold the title. They'd say you were more than just the river lord now, Naruto. Sarutobi finally understood what Naruto had been doing after Wave Country become a protectorate of river. That was the first time had heard the name Naruto in a very long time. River County kept its secrets, even the name of its lord, safe and sound. Thank you, number 3, Naruto said to the schoolmaster. Would you care to join my conversation with the old man? No, I've already had an hour with him. I think I'll go speak with our newest volunteer, the young Sarutobi. I won't have had this sort of time if you'd have shown up tomorrow. I'll be off to Wave Country actually to inspect some new volunteers for River Center. Thank you, Namikaze-san, Sarutobi said. I appreciate the valuable time you've lent me. When I was Hokage it was difficult to indulge myself for an hour like you've done for me and I suspect your ninja force dwarves what we had in our prime. I can neither confirm nor deny that, Sarutobi. The pleasure was mine. The schoolmaster walked back to the river center while the daimyo Namikaze Naruto led the old man into the daimyo's garden. This is beautiful, Sarutobi said. Beyond description. Yes, that is the purpose of the living city. Strength can't seem hard and unbreaking but the more devious sort can inspire reverential awe and happiness. I went for greenery rather than grand palaces as the Earth Lord or Fire Lord do. As a result, I do not mind sitting for court most days because it's always so beautiful to look at. Sarutobi had long wanted this conversation to happen but now he did not quite know what to say. He knew he had questions he wanted to ask and apologies to make but the words did not belong to him at the present. Would you care for tea? Or some food? Whatever you're having. Naruto called no one. In fact he seemed to have no servants around at all, but when he showed Sarutobi a seat under the grand gazebo, easily large enough to shelter 1,000 people, there was hot tea and a selection of dumplings sitting on a small elegant table between the 2 chairs. I hear there's a story about your trees, Sarutobi said. They're puppets, of course. The daimyo smiled while Sarutobi showed just a bit of surprise. He had considered that as a possibility. Usually I have a cage bunch and deal with them, but during especially boring meetings, I'll control them myself to keep from screaming. Like my next meeting in an hour, the political intrigue hour when the diplomats from our non-protectorates get their weekly meeting to protest this and that. Sarutobi understood the pain of diplomacy. He was surprised that the Naruto he remembered could be restrained in the face of such annoyance. He did not voice this thought. So it really was you, all those years ago in that ill-fated Chunin selection exam? You saved my life. Naruto took a sip of tea, then nodded. I did. Why? The teacup went back on the table before Naruto explained, I still don't know. I hated you then, more than I remembered the good parts. I remembered the pain of being refused, being ignored. You seemed so powerful then, so interested in my life, but then you dropped me when I was in the hospital. You stopped coming around, stopped eating ramen with me and the last straw was my schooling, once I realized something odd was happening. But you were both the bastard and the old man. I guess I chose to save the old man, the cheerful grandfather who liked to eat ramen with me when I was a young lad. Straight to the heart of the matter, Sarutobi realized. Naruto was an aggressive diplomat rather than a cautious one. That much was obvious even if he did possess a certain potency of expression. I regretted what I did then just as I do to this day. Once you were hurt, once it was clear that the Kyuubi wouldn't be able to give you a new leg, my thoughts turned to your safety. I wouldn't be able to ensure your ninja education. I wouldn't be able to ensure you were strong enough to defend yourself from all sorts of potential hazards. Telling someone like me he can't do a thing just ensures he will without your oversight. Sarutobi nodded. I realize that now. I could have nicer about it or found a better set of compromises but I didn't. I was old and tired and I failed you again and again. You're right, the worst part was the school. The compromise with the civilians, who I could have overruled without much effort, kept you safe at the cost of your education. After all, it was hard to justify keeping an Anbu on you when you were considered so helpless. I took the Anbu away, kept you out of school, and the civilians on the council agreed not to ever inflame passions again concerning you. Such a treasonous admission that they had done just that in the past I should have punished. I know that now. Another failure. Best I know they did keep their word. You were no longer something they noticed since you stopped most of your pranks and were never seen with their children in the classroom. An uneducated demonic child without a leg no longer seemed so ominous to them. Naruto took a dumpling. Sarutobi noted that Naruto's manners had certainly improved in the intervening years since their last meeting. Civilians, HNN. I always thought it foolish to have civilians on the council. In a village of mercenary ninja, what value does a civilian add to the discussion? I certainly don't listen to anyone who hasn't served as a ninja. Sarutobi reached out for his teacup, his very warm teacup, then set it back. It needed to cool. Why? Civilians, with no personal experience of war, are often more bloodthirsty than hardened military veterans. That is why only those who've done their time in the military may serve in high positions of civil administration and justice. To my mind, no sane ninja lusts after war but he or she will turn to it in the final extreme. That is the right way. And what of the warmongers? As I said, no sane ninja wishes for war as a first option. My adseers who counsel war above all else find that they are no longer my advisors. For years I waged a 4-man war, then a 2-man war, and then a 1-man war. I have committed atrocities in the name of peace when I hunted the Akatsuki that I would not wish any other man to have to experience. I will not lust after war but when it comes, and I know it will, I will make sure we win. It's harder than it sounds, Sarutobi said, by way of defending himself. People have opinions. You did not manage your counselors this way. I understand you named your former teammates as your counselors and then let them run amok. And you placed a former rival for the office of Hokage there too, a bitter old man even at the age of 19. A mistake. All of my top advisors, especially number 3, are ninja who I could see myself appointing daimyo in my stead when I step down. They have the kind of restraint and judgment that I trust. You would never have appointed your rival, who assembled an alternate power structure to your increasing anger and impotent demands. I've read a few histories of the Hidden Leaf for sale on the Grand Concourse or your atrophied teammates. They may have had sound minds well suited to measuring out justice in a small town or leading a permanent delegation to a small but important trading partner. I do not keep them in the living city, nor do I keep them in the same posting for more than a year or two. I have no problem squashing an internal rebellion. After all, I can form up an army of special clones known in these parts as the Black Hand when I send them on missions or when they operate here in the living city to deal with a traitor or an infiltrator, and not even force my ninja to deal with such people or have those brutal actions on their consciences, but I wish to keep them from appearing in the first place. But that's just how I handle things like that here. Sarutobi shrugged. He was too old to let any longer. He hoped Naruto would be stronger than him when it came time to make difficult choices. All of Sarutobi's hardest decisions failed. He wouldn't bother to defend them. In many ways, he deserved the title of unluckiest ninja ever. Or maybe most foolish ninja ever. Sarutobi perked up and abandoned his self-criticism when he heard the next question. How long have you known I was here, old man? The question had genuine curiosity behind it. This question made Naruto seem less a daimyo and more an old acquaintance. Weeks, yes, 7 weeks. You kept yourself well hidden. Until Wave Country became a protectorate of River, I hadn't even thought of daimyos and such in quite some time. My last letter to the Fire Lord was not well received. Naruto nodded. You refused to appoint yet another successor, if the rumors are correct. Indeed, you disbanded the ninja force and left the village in the hands of civilians. After the death of the Rakudame Hokage, I just couldn't do it again. Naruto popped a small dumpling into his mouth. This was obviously his lunch and the only food he might get until night. Naruto lived in even more of a bubble than Sarutobi had. Your choice for the 6th was strange, Naruto said. Hyuga. A Taijutsu specialist without a summoning contract or a famed original technique. A powerful jounin at the time, by all reports, but was he the strongest the village had left of the younger generation? Sarutobi shook his head. He certainly wasn't at cage level when I appointed him, but neither was I when the Nidaime died. I grew into it. Jiraiya had 30 more years of experience than many Kages do when he took over. Normally this is a young man's game, few ninja, especially the powerful ones, live to the age of 30. Only the Shodai and Yondaime were truly at an undisputable Kage level at the age of 20 when they took the reins of power. Not the Nidaime. My sensei was a good man and his water techniques were powerful, but he was more a pacifist than I was. His appointment after the sudden death of the Shodai was political, although the Nidaime turned out to be a good leader. A great leader in wartime once he was pushed into it. I was stronger than sensei by the time I was 17, stronger than our Hokage at the time, but not stronger than the other Kages. So, the Hyuga. Sarutobi took the teacup and took a sip. It was a fine, rich tea, better than what he could find in even the finest shops in Wave. It was a political choice on my part. My son was dead, thankfully, as I found out a few months later when I examined his papers and deciphered them, as were Tsunade and some of our strongest Jounin. Jiraiya had placed all the Anbu and Jounin who were in the village under a special seal to prevent them from waking until he released them. He did not know who were loyal and who traitors. It took months after his death to unravel that blasted thing and get them all restored. A few nearly died from dehydration before we figured out what happened and located all of them. We had to feed them through tubes stuffed down their throats. A nasty business. I'd still like to wring my student's neck. The daimyo gave only a wry smile. His eyes involuntarily twisted to look at an unusual monument in the garden. When Sarutobi stared at it, it looked like the Uchiha clan fan had been engraved in it. An odd memorial for a land where the Uchiha had never lived. There was a story there Sarutobi would have to ask, but perhaps not today. So the pool was not terribly deep, Sarutobi continued, dropping his thoughts on that odd monument. But I wanted someone with passion. Oddly enough, the taciturn Hyuga was the most passionate, the most likely to bring at least temporary peace and solve our current problems. A year went by, a hard but promising year of rebuilding and mourning, then he began his crusade to destroy the caged bird seal, a Hyuga clan abomination. It was rather ridiculous. The Hokage was branded with that mark so that any one of 40-odd people could kill him with just a hand seal. The battle raged for 8 months before a Hyuga elder did just that, rather than cave to the Hokage's demands. Sarutobi cold hold the sad timbre in his voice. Talking about those dark days always made him angry and depressed at the same time. In my grief and anger, Hokage for the 4th time, I slaughtered every main branch Hyuga. I reminded them why I was not just a doddering old man. They were Taijutsu masters, but I knew more ninjutsu than even my craziest student managed to learn. None of them got within 40 meters of me, they were stupid to have concentrated so much on short-range combat. That was when I disbanded the village and wrote the daimyo. I will fight no more forever. In his rage at losing face, he sent assassins after me and I was forced to violate my pledge. Naruto had been attentive to the entire story. He finally nodded, with an unreadable expression on his face. I had wondered why the old daimyo and a good portion of his family had a fatal accident around that time. The convenient lie told by the new Fire Lord who disliked his great-uncle, but did not care to have such a dishonor tarnishing him before he was invested. We declared neutrality, and I moved with my grandson to Wave Country. Naruto nodded. A political nod, he had heard enough. A sad tale, the end of an idea. I did my part to rescue that village twice. Once as a sacrifice when I was a few hours old, once as a protector during an invasion that did not concern me. I would not have gone out of my way to help them a 3rd time, nor certainly as many times as you have. Sarutobi drained his teacup. It was a delicious liquid, but it couldn't take away his temporary melancholy. You've become hard. Jaded. Yes. My story is my own, however. I will say that I know how and why to reward betrayal harshly. For instance, I had a neutrality with Lord Pain, then leader of Akatsuki. How did you? Jiraiya told me they were hunting the Biju. Lord Pain changed the plans once he rose to the top of the heap. However, once he realized that my plan for bringing peace to the elemental nations was working, while his was stuck in a rut, he attempted to betray me. When he proposed neutrality, I told him I knew his vulnerabilities and I gave him a demonstration he did not believe I could duplicate my original show of force when he sent a sneak attack my way. 5 hours after I killed his assassins, I leveled his stronghold and killed him. He was surprised when he died. How? Sarutobi wondered. What was this technique? To kill such a powerful ninja, the one who was reputed to have slain Salamander Hanzo, the world's strongest ninja for more than 2 decades. From Naruto's smile, Sarutobi realized this was not a secret that he would be sharing. Sarutobi decided to ask an impertinent question. Your plan for peace, you mean your protectorates?